You would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. And Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Flower.
Present.
Commissioner Kanda.
Here.
Commissioner Prince.
Yeah.
Attorney Clint Smith.
Present.
The clerk to the board, Kelly Campbell, present.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Gentlemen, any amendments to the agenda?
I do not, sir.
Nor do I.
No.
Thank you. And audience introduction. Mr. Vogel, would you start, please?
Charles Bogle, rural Custer County.
Kathy Garcia, United States Senator Cory Gardner.
Lynn McGree, the airport board, representing airport board.
Bob Jolly, airport manager.
Alan Butler, airport.
Fred Berry.
Jackie Hobby, Planning and Zoning.
Tracy Ballard, Tribune.
Jackie Beaver, Sentinel.
Thank you and welcome. Maybe with 3 airport people, we could get 5 of us to Golden. Yeah. I don't want to drive through Denver. Approval of the minutes of February 23rd and 28th. Gentlemen, I believe you've received copies of those.
Got them, I'll move we accept them.
Okay. Both?
Yes.
Yes. I'll second that. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes as presented from February 23rd and February 28th, 2018 for the Board of County Commissioners. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, we will proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Motion carries. The minutes have been accepted and approved. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for that. Commissioner items. Commissioner Kanda.
A couple things. Talked to Alan yesterday about a couple things. And Alan, I got a check here for you. I'll give it to you. And for the fuel.
Robert.
Goes to
Oh,
Robert.
Robert. Okay. Robert, you get this check.
Yay.
Yeah, give it to you when you come up. And I know there's other things they're going to bring up very shortly. And then I got to talk to Kit Shy. I talked to the Rice family about their offer to have us consider some of their ground for a landfill. Told them, what the issues were. There wasn't quite the right topography, and there's some other things associated with that. So they're good with that. They're going to put it on the market, and if it's available, they'll let us know, and we can make a decision if there's some other thing we might want to do with it. But they asked if we'd be considered selling them a right of way into their ground through the gravel pit. Said sure. We'll have to see what that means, and I'll get Kit to discuss that and see what the issue would be to do that.
I thought their property came around up to the...
It does. It borders
road.
it borders it, but there's no right of way across where we are, or past. There's a piece of ground. I got to get the details from Kit.
Okay.
We'll
Yeah.
find out what it means. Into the top end, they've been asking about that initially.
And I thought they owned that property adjoining the gravel pit to the west.
We'll find out.
Maybe not. I don't know what to do.
They asked
to
about
file
it
anyway.
so
Okay.
we'll
Cool.
see. That's all I got since
Great.
yesterday.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Commissioner Prince.
Yesterday I was asked about the tourism board.
Mm-hmm.
I followed up on that. I got responses, and I feel that I'm satisfied with the response.
Yeah, I was included on those emails, and I agree. It looks like, number one, that the bylaws did not require that membership. It was recommended, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I didn't see that. I didn't realize that. I thought there was something besides the bylaws that said that was when they stood it up. Okay. I'll have to look and see where I got it. There's mention of 3 people on it, so I don't know whether that's part of it or not.
Yeah. Well, it appeared to me like that
I'm satisfied that they're,
Okay.
I mean, it's an excellent board, they're doing well. And I think there was a.
Anyway, thanks for doing that.
Okay, anything else,
Yeah.
sir?
No.
And, only thing I guess I would have is, as an informational item is, obviously, last evening was, the political caucuses. I attended the Republican caucus for my district, or precinct 3. And was selected as a delegate to the
Well,
county.
you're a super delegate
Yeah,
too. huh?
county assembly, so.
And Fred shake hands?
Oh, yeah, yeah. But other than that, that was it.
Yeah, I did too. I should have mentioned that. That was a good time for all.
Good, good, good. And Councilor Smith, any items this morning?
Yeah, just to follow up from yesterday, I have a copy of the lease between the county and BLM for the
Oh, good.
Hibbs Hill Lookout Mountain Tower. I assume you'd like to get a copy of it. I can have Brenda do that for you.
Okay, thank
Also,
you.
concerning the Weed Advisory Board, in 2015, there was a resolution, I don't have the number, but it's, I can give the date to Brenda, approving the weed management plan. The law says, the statute says, and I still forgot to print out the memo, so I'll just email it all to you later, but the statute says that it has to be reviewed every 3 years by the weed management or weed advisory board, so it's due this year. But they did have a management plan that was approved by the board back in 2015. And I also have a copy of the bylaws for the weed advisory board that I worked on with Rob, and these were actually approved in August of 2016, and it has a list of who the chairman and Robin was an ex officio member then, and that's what Shannon was talking about.
Right.
Shannon Oth was talking about yesterday, but this shows the membership then, and I'm not sure who applied or who indicated wanting to still be on the board. I'll get copies of this
Thank you,
for all
I
of you.
appreciate that. So, as far as we know, there's still not a resolution creating that
Nothing that Kelly could
advisory board. We have a resolution about the management plan,
Right.
but not necessarily about the weed advisory board itself. Would you recommend that's something then we need to?
I think it would be a
Resolve.
good idea, and I think I'd like to have perhaps a workshop with the weed
Get the board up
advisory
and
board
running
and
and
talk to them and figure out who's on it, and then go ahead and get a resolution done.
yeah, good. Okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Can I
Yes.
ask a question? For Rob, quick.
I'm just gonna
I'm sorry.
no, I'm just gonna give this to Brenda.
Oh, okay. Just quickly, the 3 of us are planning on going to Golden, Colorado on the 13th for the broadband continued discussions.
Get a copy with the number on it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No problem. It just doesn't make sense for the county to pay for mileage for 3 of us. If we go together, could you remind us or tell us again, A, is it acceptable for us to drive in one car, and B, if it is, what the protocol we should be cautious about?
Yes, it is acceptable, and it's customary. The commissioners from a lot of rural counties all travel together to meetings like this. There's no problem all being in the same car. Really isn't a violation to discuss county issues, but I would recommend you not talk about any of the county issues. The prohibition is against making any decisions or anything, but it would be better just to avoid, discussing any of the issues that, are before the board. But there's nothing that prohibits you at all. The Sunshine Law does not say that you cannot all be together in the same place, including traveling together.
Thank you very much.
Okay, appreciate that. Yeah, I felt the same thing, that it's just ridiculous that we have to be so worried about public perception that we end up driving 3 vehicles up there costing the county X number of dollars when we could all travel together. Obviously, in the past, there was some citizenry concern about that very thing, and I know that's why Jay asked you specifically to address that this morning, but hopefully we are trustworthy enough and and the county believes in us enough that we can travel together. Bill and I attended the same meeting in Denver. We drove 2 different vehicles because we didn't want to set ourselves up to be accused for some improprieties as far as conducting ourselves as county commissioners. I would
And I
desperately
did
like
not
to put
charge
this
the
behind
county
us.
any mileage. I'm not going to if I do go by myself. Anyway. But what counties do that? Clint, who'd you talk to?
I couldn't say specifically. I have heard from previous commissioners that you know, when they go to the CCI, for example, they talk to the other commissioners. A lot of them come, especially
We've
from
got
the
a
western
commissioner
slope.
in the back here. Alan, what was your practice? What and why?
Generally, it worked out that we took separate cars for different reasons. Once, I can remember several times where commissioners, let's see, Lynn Annaberry had to go to a meeting, and he was gonna meet us at this other place. We had to spread out when we got up there to go to meetings, and I went over to the airport front range, and most of the time, we drove ourselves, and we always paid for our own fuel because of that. It wasn't because that particular board was afraid of repercussions from the county. It was just, you can meet socially, I understand, from our good attorney, and you can go to lunch and you can visit about all kinds of things, but you shouldn't talk county business, and you shouldn't ever say, I'm going to vote for this or we vote for that. That's where the problem is.
And my feeling, just so everybody understands, is the recall was an issue, whether perceived or real or whatever, and from what I understand, it was an issue. And so I'm going to do all I can to avoid that personally, and that's why I'm not going to charge the county for traveling if indeed that is an issue, or whatever. And so we just want to make sure we're doing the best we can to make sure that. And right now, I'm really proud of what we've been doing since we've been on this board, all of us, and are doing our best to make sure that the public keeps the trust in us. So, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Alan.
Good.
Thank you, Clint.
Anything else, gentlemen, Mr. Smith?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gady, anything on administrative assistant?
Nothing today.
Okay, thank you. And before we move into staff reports, I would like to ask Miss Kathy if she would like to address the group. Thank you for being here on behalf of Corey Gardner. So if you'd like to come up, we'll introduce yourselves. Thank you.
I misunderstood. I thought she was Senator Gardner.
You did a good job scaring us.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm fine,
Tom
and
Flower.
Nice to see you again.
Jay
Nice
Prince.
to see you again. How are you doing? Just very quickly, just want to remind you all that our Senate office can assist individuals with problems that they have maybe with the VA on their benefits, or problems with Social Security, IRS issues, you name it. If we don't have the answer, we will find a resource to help individuals out. As you know, the Congress they had a break, and now they're back to work. Hopefully we can get some work done. Sometimes I wonder what's happening out there, as with everything that's going on. But the Senator's working on various issues. One is broadband, and we're hoping to get that bill passed to have some more grant money for communities. He's especially looking at rural Colorado for those grants. And I know there is a bill in the state legislature, Senate Bill 2, that's working on getting some of the high-cost monies out into rural Colorado. So hopefully that will pass as well to help with broadband issues.
The rural broadband bill, do you know that number right off?
Senate Bill 2.
I thought that was a high cost. I thought
Yeah,
there
that
was
is a high
another.
cost.
Was
Was
there
there
another
another one?
rural broadband, or is it the same one?
I think it's the same
I
one
believe so.
for rural. But there is one in Congress now that the senator introduced. It's a bipartisan bill, so we're hoping that passes, because we sure do need broadband in a lot of areas. I drive through, once I pass Lahara, I'm out.
Yeah.
I can't get anything out there, so it's sad when we don't have the technology in all our areas. The senator has been working on economic development issues, looking at how we can help rural Colorado, because you can do all you can by providing grants, and this infrastructure bill that the president is working on getting Congress to look at and pass includes, private-public partnerships. Well, in our small rural communities, we don't have the resources. So that's an area that the senator is going to work on, because we don't have the resources in southern Colorado. If you look at the counties in southern Colorado, we've got the highest poverty level counties in the state.
Mm-hmm.
So we do need other resources to help our communities.
Ms. Garcia, may I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Is this part of an opportunity zone initiative that's coming down from the federal government?
Right, and it has, I think, 25% of that money going to rural areas, but it's not enough.
Got it.
We need more
I agree.
to more resources for our smaller communities. Because most of our communities are agriculture. If you look at southern Colorado, and I don't know about you, but I sure would not want to depend on foreign countries for our food, because to me it's homeland security.
Exactly. I don't want to depend on foreign countries for anything that we need.
That's it. That's it. I totally agree. But there's a lot of things happening. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well,
And I will let you know next time I'm going to be here, so you can line up those questions.
Well, it's nice having you here.
Yeah,
Thanks for being here.
Yes, and I'm sorry I haven't been here for a while, but I'm getting caught up now. We'll be out and about.
Good. And where do you live?
I live
Sorry.
in Pueblo. I live in Pueblo, and I cover 16 counties in southern Colorado.
I'd just like to say I've seen Senator Gardner on TV a couple times. He's looking very dapper. If you'd pass on for me personally, and probably for our commissioners, how much we appreciate the diligent work he's doing to help rural Custer County, some of the depressed areas that we have, and putting forth initiatives to help us move forward. And I personally appreciate, I watched what he does closely, and I really appreciate the work he's doing.
I will pass that.
Thank you very
that on
much.
to them. And if there are any, if there's grants you're looking for or things like that, let me know. I'll be more than happy to research it. We have a research capability in Washington, and it takes 3 weeks for them to turn it around. But if you're looking for something in specific, let me know. I do have a list of grants that provide monies for broadband.
That would be good. We need that.
I'll go ahead and send that to
And
you.
I have a question too. Do you work with the Action 22 as a committee that I'm sure you're familiar with?
Oh, very
With
familiar.
all when you said southern Colorado counties, that's it. So
I used to run Action 22
Did you really?
for 15 years.
So you have a good relationship with
Oh, yes.
And Sarah is
She's
seems to
right
be
upstairs from
top
my
notch.
office.
Yeah, she mentioned that. So I didn't realize that you worked that closely with them. So that's good.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I
well,
worked with
yeah.
them for 15 years, so it's...
So she's got 5 priorities, and one of them is broadband, and other ones, but I think they're key, and those are good things to keep in mind when he's wanting to push dollars down, to keep, those I think we all can agree on.
Yeah, we do have, one of the things that we do have a problem with is the fact that, federal monies come to the state. You're looking at transportation monies, and a variety of those monies come down to the state, and then the state kind of does its own little thing. So the senator's trying to figure out how we can get it more out to rural Colorado.
Yeah, the state seems to be focused on 3 population areas.
Yes, and so we've got to get away from that. And so, once the senator figures out something, it would be nice,
Get
because
him
it
as
will
mad,
help rural
get him
Colorado.
as mad at that as I've seen him mad on the TV lately about other things the feds are doing.
Mr. Vogel, you had a question?
We have not brought her up, and Senator Gardner's office on our current activities, and I'd be glad to provide her a brief, and possibly after our next week's DOLA, and then as it relates to the Economic Development Administration matching grants, a letter of recommendation out of the Senator's office would be good.
Yeah, we're in the process, Kathy, of next week going to Golden to present our case on a Department of Labor Affairs grant for broadband for our county for $1 million. So if Senator Gardner's office would, and along with the EDA grant.
Well, next week
subsequent to
is mineral impact.
That's correct, yeah, sorry. And then the federal grant will come after that, so maybe Mr. Vogel can.
Right, yeah, you can fill me in, and then I can help you with the letter of recommendation from the
Appreciate
senator.
that.
That'd be outstanding. Good, thank you. Very good. Do you get to the Capitol very often then, or?
Washington?
No,
Denver?
Denver.
I avoid it. I did it for 15 years. I went up there to lobby for 15 years, but now the traffic is worse than I've ever seen it.
It's bad.
It is bad.
That's why Tom wants to fly.
Yeah, I was curious as to
A helicopter?
to the state of affairs in the House.
I don't keep very much track with state like I used to. The other night I came home, I had a meeting up there with our Denver office, and it was 20 miles an hour between Castle Rock and Monument. It was bad. It took me 3.5 hours to get home.
Brutal.
So I'm glad I don't have to go through.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe this would be a good time to mention something about our court and jail facility needs.
Yeah, that's another issue that, of course, is raising its ugly head all over the state, and we're not immune to that either. We've got some serious issues with our jail facility.
Yes, the sheriff gave me a tour
Good.
a couple of months ago, I think. And yes, we do have some problems. And there are some grants covering jails, courthouses, and judicial buildings. And I will go ahead and send that to you.
We are in the middle of developing a strategic plan, vision, and process to meet it.
I'm so sorry. I turned it off.
I remember.
Everybody pulls their phones up.
You know what? I better silence mine too.
I apologize. I felt-
Yeah, so
It took me until this morning to turn it on from yesterday.
if you could look into that
I am
for
going to look
possibilities,
into
that
that.
would be great.
We did have a problem though. Otero County received a JAG grant for law enforcement, $81,000. They still haven't been reimbursed after 6 months, and so I'm following up on that. So just to let you know, we better keep on top of them. Federal government to get that money in. And anytime you have a question, give me a call. I'll leave you my card before I leave.
Excellent. Well, good.
Thanks
Well,
so
thank
much
you
for
for
visiting.
being here. We appreciate it.
Always
Nice
welcome
to
here.
see you. I hope
Yes.
your drive up was
Oh, it's nice.
enjoyable.
The traffic
Good.
didn't hurt you much.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, not at all. I could stay up here all day.
Wish you would.
I wish I could. I don't know why.
You wouldn't
Thank
want to
you,
be
man.
here Monday.
Appreciate it.
Really?
No, it wouldn't. Oh, thanks, Fred.
Well, thank you, man. Appreciate you being here. Staff reports. Airport. Come forward, sir.
Here he comes.
We can bring chairs if you want, or
Well, we need a chair for Robert.
there's a couple out in the hallway.
You don't have a rookie chair, Liz.
Good morning, Greg. How are you?
They say, Alan, long time no see.
Good to see you again. Keep everybody out of trouble.
I'm running out of
Good morning, Bob.
Good morning.
How are you, sir? Good. Good.
Charlie, how are you?
Good.
Here, Bob.
I brought you some goodies if you don't already have one.
Okay.
Do you have the new
No,
airport
sir.
directory for
Do not.
Colorado?
Everybody needs one of those,
You need
correct?
one of these if you're gonna
Sure.
hang around with us.
That's our
Actually, that one on the front is Telluride.
Yeah.
Looks like.
And, we used to fly to Telluride before they had those improvements, and it was a great big dip right in the middle of the,
There is.
about the time you were putting your wheels on the ground, you could go through those dips. This is, the aeronautical shark. Even for guys that are non-flyers, the back of it has some information on restricted airspace for the Pueblo area. And just in case somebody would ever ask you, and you know, you would talk about
Yeah, I got a little bet going.
Also, in there, what started to go find these new ones and hand them out was I was looking to see how many airports had courtesy cars. And most of them do. The bigger airports have rental cars, Enterprise or Avis or somebody. Even Fremont County has one of the car dealerships, Chevy guy, Bradley or one of them, and rents cars. But that was just one of my research things I was working on. We need to address that someday.
Okay.
There's different ways of handling that, obviously. So it may take a little research on this board's part, our airport board, talking to some of these managers and finding out. As far as a report goes, that's what I was going to say. You have got that great big huge briefcase, and then to tell you that there hasn't been a whole lot going on because of the wind, the weather, the rain, kind of kept activity down. But there have been some folks come and go. One bad thing that has happened, and I need to tell our board. We have a doctor, Dan Dunn, who lived in Scott City. He's deceased now. He lived in Scott City. He was a medical examiner for aviation licenses, known as a very good Christian man. Him and one of his friends had gone to Euless, Kansas, and taken part in a church activity. They fueled a plane coming back from Euless and going back to Scott City. And he called back and he said, "I've got a problem, I'm going to come back to the airport." And he crashed and both of them were killed in the accident. And he has the lease in the hangar on number 16. So Ruth, his wife, will have to be taking care of some of that. I don't know if you heard that story
Yes.
or not.
Already spoke with Ruth, probably have it sold already.
It's the hangar.
Yeah, okay, good. And that happened several weeks ago. Dan was a good man, he's a good Christian man. He loved to come up and go to church here. I believe he went to Church of Christ with some friends that lived down the street from me.
And his last name again?
Dunn, D-U-N-N. Dr. Dan Dunn. And I'm so sorry that happened. He flew in a twin Baron. It's a Beechcraft, very good aircraft. Took good care of it. He didn't take chances. He didn't fly in bad weather. He could if he had to, but he preferred to land and drink hot chocolate and wait till the storm hits. So just pass that on to you. Which brings up the question of when our board found out that Dan had been killed in this accident. The first thing out of the board's mouth, without thinking, they said, "I wonder if he's going to sell the hangar now. You know, we just need more hangars. Somewhere down the road, we've got to address that. Need more hangars, and like Jackie said, it's gone already. I don't know to who. But there were several guys said, well, I'm gonna go call. I said, well, give her time to cry out loud.
Yeah.
People are sensitive. That doesn't happen very often. When it does, it's sad.
That being said about hangers, Alan, what's the status on Dr. Smith's?
The repair material was brought to, let's see, this Thursday. It comes this Thursday. And I asked, and it came from Ace, and I asked Ace for a 16-foot piece. It's 14.8 to replace this whole piece. And they're supposed to call when that comes in, and we'll slide it in this building, keep from blowing away or whatever. And then I had not talked to the young man that was going to install it, but that ought to be done pretty soon.
Apparently Johnny's in touch with him.
They're talking.
Yeah.
Good.
And possibility there of some changes happening.
That's what I was wondering too. Nothing official.
Nothing's official, nothing, no one said anything.
Do they own that?
Any letters, but
Smith's on that hanger.
just, yeah, it's his, he's got it leased. So that will probably change now.
Yeah.
There are a few problems on that side where people that originally built those hangars did not put electricity in because it was so expensive at the time. I think now it's at about 33,000, and then the next guy pays a chunk, and it comes, you know how that works.
It's pretty steep.
Pretty steep electricity, so most of them got a generator in the hangar, run the door up and down. Had a young lady in the community who wrote us a couple months ago, emailed us and asked us if she could have her, have I talked to you about this? Her picnic after graduation at the airport. And she had been appointed by one of the senators to go to the Air Force Academy. Of course, then the next step is the selection part. She'll probably make it. And so we had given her permission that she could clean up and all that, and she could have her. And her senior picture is with her standing with Monty Lee's airplane. She's got an airplane in the senior picture. Pretty cool.
So let's do it in there, really, but
Yeah.
for the academy, if she doesn't.
If she doesn't get the Air Force gig, she's gonna go.
She wants to be a
flight
pilot real
engineer.
bad.
She's gonna fly. And Monty has kind of mentored her, taking her places and riding, letting her fly. So that's a real honor, I think, for our county and our community, for this young lady to be an appointment. Not many students get to do that. That's all I had on my list. Robert's got a couple of things to talk about. He's the airport manager. We've got some things that we're working on, but we're just not ready to say, here's this and here's that, and this is the way it would be done. Rather than just telling you a bunch of stuff and then.
So what? Yeah.
Okay, good. Robert Jolly.
Yes, well, just for your information, we did sell 171 gallons of fuel in February, which is really good for considering the weather. The weather is really
Yeah,
good.
who is that guy?
Yeah.
Those two guys or whoever. I don't want to know them.
But I did get a message from Alan in sort of a cryptic email.
That page.
The message is important. A guy sent us this email, like I said, it's a little bit cryptic, but.
Pretty cryptic.
Yes, and Alan asked me to follow up, so I talked to the guy on the phone. And he kept telling me what they wanted. And I asked him, I said, well, who are you? He said, we want this and that. And I said, who is we?
Just so everybody knows, they're asking what the maximum allowable weight of our runway is, and that's all it is. So
Bigger
that is pretty
airplane.
cryptic. That means it's a big airplane they're looking to bring in here.
Right, and there's the other part of that,
Jet A fuel.
Jet A fuel.
Right.
So I asked him, I said, who is we? And he said, we bought Wolf Spring Ranch.
But I figured,
Apparently the south end.
South end.
And I said, how big an airplane do you have? He said, Falcon 900.
Like a Boeing 727.
So that runway was designed for a Falcon 900. But whether or not we ever get Jet A is gonna be y'all's decision, not, we can make a recommendation. And my personal opinion is, I would like to have it for the future.
Bob, if I may just make a comment. We kind of discussed, well, this question came up not long ago, and we thought maybe the Navajo Nation who was purchasing the parts of the Wolf Ranch. Just off the top of my head, I was thinking, you know, if they were willing to pay for the tanks and the installation, and maybe we could give them a discount on the fuel, maybe sell at our cost until such time it's repaid. To me, that sounds like it might be a win-win.
Sounds like he read your letter.
This email, this is what the guy asked me. He said, would you be willing for us to put in a tank? If we could buy fuel at cost, and then you could sell it to the public or whatever. And I said, that's gonna be up to the county commissioners. So I thought maybe that would be a good idea for you to give this gentleman a call and.
But what we would have to do, there's other things than just a tank.
Yes.
This airplane has to be pumped up into the wing, so it usually requires a truck. They'd be willing to probably get the truck also in order to get the right fuel. So there's a lot of details that we have to look into, and I think we need to meet with you.
Yeah, you know, the Falcon 900 takes single point, but there are a lot of jets like the one that Bill Geipel has is over wing, and we've got another gentleman out there that has a jet that he keeps Pueblo or Cannon City one, and the only reason he doesn't keep it at our airport is because we don't have fuel.
Right. And unlike general aviation airplanes, the reason for the truck also is you can't back up out of the way, and you can't pull in close enough. There's a lot of issues. So a lot of details work out, but really a neat thing is sort of fortuitous because it's not an Indian Navajo Nation. It's a different piece of.
These folks are from San Antonio.
Lots of money, but we can leverage it without us all.
The upfront cost.
Yeah, and they'll pay to install it, so we understand. Now, as a commissioner, you know, the guys that decide yes or no and what you're gonna do, as you talk to them, the other thing, yes. And if there's a truck, you know, where you wanna keep it, where would you put the tank? If you're gonna fill a truck, you can put a tank anywhere. Let's get the concept
Opportunity
first.
for grants. I mean, we can get another building made. We're going to have something to cover it with because I don't know if the fire department will want us parking 1,000 gallons next to their fire plant.
In warm weather states,
Could be.
warm weather states, they have those large tanks. Like Fremont County has 10,000 gallon tank, and they've got a shed over it.
Truck parks under there.
So that's something, like I say, that you do some research on.
I think it would be.
We'll add that to our list.
I think that'd be a good thing for us to look into. It would be, I think that looking into the future, you know, I think would be great.
Yeah, we just had this discussion at our last staff report meeting with the airport, so.
There's a helicopter involved in it too.
Yes, they also have a helicopter.
Good. What else?
Big plane.
That's all I got.
Okay.
May I ask a question? Yesterday we learned that some fuel was pumped and the meter or whatever the mechanism.
It's all been fixed.
And the one gentleman paid us, I believe, that's probably the check. My question was, do we do an inventory to see if maybe any other fuel disappeared or are we good?
We're good.
Okay, perfect. Second question was, is the fire truck actually there yet?
No.
Okay, what's the status of that?
Well, the truck itself is down here at the fire department. They are putting new tires on it, new batteries.
And then they'll bring it
They're
up.
equipping it, and then the intent was to.
Okay,
I asked
thank you.
Dave Townsend to come see us last meeting, and something happened right at the, as he needed to leave, go to the airport. And he didn't make it, so I didn't get to talk to him, and then I read in the newspaper
Yeah,
where we
kits
changed
now.
fire
Right,
chiefs.
right.
And so they're all changing, kids
Yeah.
said, well, we're all, lots of things changing.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, talk to you later, that was last night.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Sounds like things are going well. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I had a chance to look at that truck, and that was the status.
I saw that.
They were working on.
I would think, just me, I would think that probably when they get the personnel trained to move, to drive the truck, you know,
Yeah.
move it around,
Right.
that it would show up, because
Great.
because we're
The
not.
airport's all ready for it, we're just waiting for them to
Because
go.
the airport board, they'll drive the truck.
Yeah. Jackie, comment or question?
Yes, did you discuss the whole
No,
thing
was
with?
getting ready to ask him about that.
Okay,
Thank you.
he's a mind reader, I see.
It's amazing.
I think, Attorney Smith, jump in here anytime you want. We were discussing about the appropriate name. Are you an advisory committee or you are an airport board? My contention is if you are an advisory entity, then you would not necessarily fall into the duties and realms of a board. I don't believe you're an advisory committee. I believe you're an airport board, but Mr. Smith has looked into that some as well.
My question was, what was in existence before the authority board? I think that was 1994 when the Airport Authority Board was created. Do you remember what was going on prior to that?
Yeah, the authority board was designed when when the county was leaving where the baseball field is down here.
Okay.
When it was leaving and moving to
Silver
the
West.
trade out here to the Silver West, it was DOLA, and I don't know where we would find that information. But I remember, I think it's Whitney Sullivan was the chairman of the board, and they called it an authority board, and they filed it as an authority board, and DOLA accepted it, because that's an arm of the government.
Right.
And then, that's when people, that's what you did authority boards. But then as time went on, and money and all, the government changed, everything changes, you know. A lot of the airports did away with that, and they called themselves advisory boards.
And the authority went from there up to the commissioners, is that what happened? In
Well,
theory.
the authority board was equal to being on the level of a commissioner. That's why they do that. But an authority board also has the capability of raising its own money,
Right.
such as Grand Junction, Centennial Airport, who makes millions of dollars a year, and they have their own CPA, their own. It's a little mini government within.
Yeah. What I meant was you were talking about things changing, and that's what
Things
changed.
change. That's one of the things
When
that has changed.
Changed over.
I guess the question I had when because the authority board was dissolved in 2011, and I can't find any resolution or anything else where an advisory board was actually created. Do you have any documentation that shows that was done?
Probably that wasn't done.
Okay,
And I remember.
and because there was the airport fund in Virginia, Trujillo told me yesterday the airport fund was in existence even prior to the authority board being created. I guess there was some kind of a separate fund. At least that's her recollection, that Sam DiNardo, the accountant for the county, had recommended that, and I'm not sure why that would have been recommended before the authority board, but after.
Well, they had an airport here always,
Right.
so they worked it.
And the county always had a little money to cut grass and stuff,
Right.
and so they had a line, and I think it just said airport. I don't
Good.
think it had repairs and maintenance and fence and that kind of thing.
But when you, during the time it was an authority board, were you taking care of all of that separately, or was the county still involved in the
The
maintenance?
county was still involved.
Okay. And there were bylaws for the authority board. Were there any bylaws that were done after you became an advisory board?
Yes.
Can I get a copy of that? Because I don't have those.
There's a set of bylaws, and it was, open my big mouth here, but I think it was approved by the commissioners back.
Well, it should have been
Where
one.
I think it's signed off somewhere.
Okay.
Then, what was the other thing? We have a set of, I don't know, about 5 pages or so, operating rules for the airport. For instance, it says, we've got bylaws, and then this other set says you can't, for instance, you can't be a diesel mechanic shop in your hangar. You can't.
Alan, that's your special use permit.
That goes all the way to a special use permit.
So that's what that special use permit is, telling you what uses are allowed on that airport.
Right.
Which is another issue. That special use permit was issued to the authority board. Was it ever modified or changed when they became an advisory board?
No, that was the subject that brought this up, because I have modified it twice, but we keep switching boards, and so no one has agreed on anything. So when you come to the agreement of what you're gonna call this board, if you're gonna call it a committee or what you're gonna call it, then I can go back in there and clean up that document and show it to Alan Butler and see if he agrees with what we did.
My recommendation would be that we drop the advisory part, because they do more than just advising. They have a lot of independent decision-making responsibilities, and I think it should just be the airport board.
Drop the word advisory.
Drop the word advisory.
Whatever you guys want to do.
Because the way you're
What
operating,
we're doing.
You have a budget line, and you operate within that budget line that we approve, and you need to be able to do that, so it makes sense.
There has always been some type of a budget for the airport.
Right.
30-something years ago, the commissioners had to account for where that money went if they cut some grants. It was very small, I'm sure. I had nothing to do. Well, there wasn't a board or wasn't. And then Judge Sullivan got this, the word authority board, because that's what people were doing. And then
Set up his own tax.
And then, the last set of commissioners did away with the authority board and called it advisory.
Yeah, I agree with Attorney Smith. I just, based on what I know and understand about your operation and how you function, I do not believe advisory is the correct term.
And I
You
agree
do so
with
much
that.
more than coming to us and giving us advice on how we should run the airport. If that were the case, then I'd say yes, advisory is applicable.
Right.
Just an old name, isn't it?
Yeah, given this
Board
case, I
advisory.
think board would be the more appropriate thing. But as we talked with Commissioner Kanda, we certainly weren't gonna make that name change without this conversation with you guys, having you involved in that. So if you need to take that back to your board and have that discussion.
Most of us are here.
And then talk to Jackie, who happens to be here
Yeah, but
too.
quorum is here. Where do we go with this?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. What do you?
My suggestion would
Bylaws.
be, let your board, if you're approved, if you're okay with the change, come to us, we'll make a motion, and we'll hopefully
Change it
go
by
ahead and make a
motion.
change.
Well, I think it should be done by resolution.
Resolution.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you guys wanna know when I go buy a fuel filter.
No, and we don't want to pick the kind either.
No.
Yes, Jackie, you had a comment?
So you're gonna do a resolution?
Eventually, yes.
I'd like
Okay.
them to come back, your board approved,
We'll
and then we'll
meet
do our
next
resolution.
Thursday.
And
Okay,
then we
then we
need to
can come
wrap
back.
that around SUP and change the wording in that as well,
We're
correct?
gonna
And
talk to
then-
Jackie about this, how to fold in the other requirements, and then you can
Then
flow those
and then
down
I'll
to
tell you
your.
what will be required to get that SUP changed.
Okay.
Also, a map should be on its way of the whole airport, one map for the whole thing.
Guys say you do it?
Yeah, so.
He's got it done, he just sent one that wasn't signed, and if I have to, I'll drive over there and let him sign it.
Make him sign it.
Very good, thank you.
It's by one of my favorite restaurants.
All right, Thank you, gentlemen.
Good job, guys.
Okay.
Good job.
Forward to business. Get with you.
I like that.
Everybody's
Sorry,
down.
everybody get back. Where's that thing on, almost to the state highway.
Thank you, Clint.
I passed Colorado City, it's in Colorado City. Oh, yes. On the left hand side. It's our breakfast office.
Good morning.
Morning.
Public Health.
How are ya?
Good. How
How
are
we
you?
doing?
It was a good old handshake from somebody who's more educated now than you were when we last saw you, I understand.
Can you believe it?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's exciting.
I am finally in one piece, not, spreading germs. So I can be quick. I really don't have anything new.
Don't bet on it.
I gotta pull up your documents, so if you go too quick, I wouldn't even get pulled up
I would
there.
just like to tell you, for the first time in like 20 years ago, you gave it to me. And I was always hesitant about that because the last time I got one, 20 years ago, you gave and made me sick. I mean, it was perfect. And I want to thank you. So I appreciate you convincing me that it needed to be done.
Yes, I also got the flu shot and the flu.
I've heard that. So that happens.
It's a good recommendation.
But I was sick for like 4 days, not 4 weeks.
That's what I heard.
So
If you do get the shot and you still get it, it's much milder. But thank you for that. I have not gotten it.
good.
Is that in some kind of attempt to get even for the necktie thing now, or are you gonna lobby that?
With this?
No, yeah, the flu shot to the commissioners. I'm waiting for that to start.
It's coming. It's coming.
Mr. Smith, have you been a victim of a flu shot yet?
I did go get a
Did
We
you?
went the same day.
Then let's move on. I'm done talking about that.
You're starting to become part of the minority.
That's right.
Okay, so health fair is still on schedule for the 7th of April. And we are all set to do children's screenings, height, weight, vision, BMI, and dental.
You gonna teach us to do shots?
Sure, come on over. I'll hook you up.
Can I give it to him?
Yeah, Kelly's not coming.
The Custer County Kids Council is almost done with their survey, so that'll be interesting to see what kind of data we get from that. That's primarily like how many kids we have in the county that aren't in the school system. So I'll be very anxious to see what that is. Lots of CPR classes going on. Flu shots are still available.
Move on, please.
And we're still doing site visits. We have 2 site visits coming the last week of March. And that's it.
Well, now, hold on. You're just going way too fast.
Sorry.
Radon.
Radon, we've given out 2 radon tests this month and they're both negative. So, and that's actually super encouraging because those houses are both over 100 years old that they were testing. So.
I had a couple questions about that. Did we, obviously you keep a record of people who have requested those radon kits?
I actually don't. I just pass them out and they go actually to the Colorado Department of Public Health.
So they would have a record and the results, because that's what I'm wondering about is, how do we track that?
We get it from the state, and it's super easy. We send, I can send them an email, and they'll send me back a spreadsheet.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? If you have a radon remediation system in your home, do you still need to check for radon?
Yes, because it's in the soil, potentially.
Okay.
So.
Cause I got a fan that runs 24/7 blowing in it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll come get it.
I mean, it's only like every 5 years. You should probably check it because it's not something that's gonna like all of a sudden have
Get
a
worse so
little,
quick.
yeah, mushroom cloud of radon in your house.
I wonder why it's glowing.
Yeah. That might be other things too.
Probably more radon from your watch. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
I will ask, because I guarantee I'm the only one in this room that cannot quote OPPI CHAPS.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So OPPI is the Office of Prevention and Planning of Improvements.
Okay, through CDHPE.
PHE, and CHAPS is the process for which we make the assessment, and that is Colorado Health and
Public something.
Public Service.
Okay.
That sounds.
Okay.
But it's planning services. So it's actually the process in which we gather the information and make a report, which hopefully by the end of the summer I'll have a nice little report for you about what the health markers are in Custer County, kind of what the temperature is, so.
Can I say something? As the point of contact for the nurse, speaking on behalf of the entire Board of County Commissioners, I'd like to commend you on finalizing your nursing studies.
Thank you.
And that was a promise you made to us when we hired. You did it when you said you would, on time, and I and the rest of the commissioners, I'm certain, really appreciate it and congratulate you.
Yeah, good job.
And then end-to-end initiative.
So neighbor to neighbor is that. I need to get better about that. Public health is all about all these little acronyms. I'm learning.
You and emergency
You and
management.
So neighbor to neighbor initiative, which is a group that Bob Tobin is heading up, and it's essentially just trying to get neighbors to help neighbors. So Mrs. Jones down the street needs to get to the grocery store, and Mrs. Smith is going to the grocery store. So let's see if we can't make that happen together. So that's a very broad 3,000-foot view of what we do, but and we're working on getting some of MRC, the Medical Reserve Corps, involved in that so that they can help get folks to the doctor and whatever, along with Rotary. Rotary already does a lot of that stuff, but we're just going to try to kind of help Rotary out. So.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, thank you, ma'am. Other questions, gentlemen?
No, but I get a kick out of your acronyms too. This is a great sentence for everybody here. It's, Eliza is working toward becoming the sane provider. SANE. I'm glad she's sane.
Well, that's debatable.
Now we just got to figure out what sane is.
So
no, you don't have to do that.
I can tell you is a sexual assault nurse examiner.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's worse than the Air Force. I'm telling you, the Air Force had more acronyms. Just put a print, say it, and then you can use it. Maybe we'll learn.
Maybe I will get better. I will do better.
Well, personally, I'm glad you clarified that OPP. I thought that was Andy Griffith's kid.
Yeah, so
Opie was here.
All right, very good. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks for coming in.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you.
All right, take care.
She's on the phone with her right now. So I believe our administrative assistant
You ready?
is talking to our treasurer, so she will be in shortly, and we'll proceed because the treasurer is the next staff report on our list.
You had a good time last night, huh? Pretty good turnout.
Yeah, I think last year they had almost 100 people.
They had 80 at ours.
So it was down, but
Nobody wants to recall you guys yet.
Not yet.
we keep it up.
Try to
It's
keep
just
it
a
that
matter
way.
of time. And tried to strong arm Mr. Smith into accepting the nomination for a delegate, but he put the kibosh on it.
Clint,
Right
wait a
at
minute.
it.
It would kind of be a conflict.
Come on, Clint.
Since I represent all the elected officials.
Good morning, how are you? Thank you for coming in. We're running a little behind schedule, so apologize. Okay. And does this require, I think this requires a motion. Yeah, so I'll let you gentlemen, do you have copies of that? Okay, good.
Before we do that,
Yeah.
anything it looks fairly standard to me. I asked the same question because there's a lot on here and I don't have a lot of time to absorb it.
Yeah.
Anything out of the usual, out of the ordinary, anything we need to look at, worry about, think about?
Yes.
You've done good, huh? I move that we accept the February 1st to February 28th monthly report from the treasurer.
I'll say.
Been moved and seconded to approve and sign off on the monthly report from the treasurer's office. Further discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed nay. Motion carries. Report has been accepted. I will sign said document. Anything else of excitement or?
No.
Wonderful. Keep up the good work.
There you go, ma'am. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, what's back?
See you later. Thanks for coming by.
Could you compliment him on his time?
Compliment him on his time, that's a beautiful guy.
We know he's got at least two now.
That was worth every minute you spent in here. Giving me the stink eye over there. It looks nice. VSO.
Hey.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Welcome
Morning.
back.
Thank
Let
you,
me
sir.
look at you. Yeah, you look pretty
Still,
good.
you're still looking all
Still
right.
alive, still
You're
alive.
on the right side of the grass.
Long story.
For those who do not know, Mr. Tim's undergone some surgical procedures and other
Yep.
things, so
And I'll get to that at the end because I had a curveball from last time I saw you guys.
well remember,
We'll come back to that.
at our age, that's all we live for, is to talk about our ailments,
Our
so
ailments,
we're
well.
dying to hear about that.
Oh, it gets interesting, more interesting. Then here's the original. And here's copies.
Oops, sorry.
And I don't think I'm gonna be as quick as originally, but I'm gonna try.
Oh, you could. You
I'm
could.
gonna try. I'm gonna try.
You're at no rush.
Okay. Okay, monthly report, state report. Pretty standard, 20 phone calls, visits, because I was out due to some medical things, so I had 49 office visits still. But normally February, around the 80s. You know, the last 3 years I kind of been tracking how the pattern goes. So, and I made sure I got your name spelled right this time.
Let me just say thank you, sir, for that.
I may be slow, but I'm teachable.
I had several monetary bets placed on whether or not that was going to occur today, so you cost me about $60.
No, March.
But you,
So who's buying you lunch then for getting it right?
yeah, I'll have to tell you about that.
Misspelled March.
No, I thought I caught it reprinted.
Right.
I did. Okay. Yeah, I did.
2 C's.
Right. I thought I had reprinted it.
Well, the nice thing is,
Mark.
sir,
Yeah.
hey, you're in good shape because on the original it is correct.
Okay, so I
It
did
is?
reprint.
You did.
I knew I reprinted something with the correct text, but I forgot to.
So you are dodging some bullets
Good.
today.
You did the right thing there.
Hey, you have to realize Chicago Public School grads. The fact that we can read and hopefully spell is doing good. So. Anyways, there were surprises on the report, and then the last page, just to show the monthly growth of the database, we're up to 450.
Okay.
So we just keep adding. Okay.
Got a question for you.
Yes.
With all due respect, because I know you've been in and out of the office some, we had talked last month about starting to track non-county services.
Yeah, and I've got it going. It says, I thought that the state database would allow me to sort that as I do my appointments. It doesn't. So I thought I could just month in and pull up there's no option for me to sort by county. I can pull up all my vets, I can do other things, but I can't do it by city.
Figure out where they came from.
Yeah, I just can't do it quick.
Is
How many that month came, what counties it came from.
And is that
So it's
something
gonna
that
be
you
a
can do
manual.
in-house
I'm
then?
gonna, yeah, I'm gonna do a manual track.
Good,
So I'll
thank
start that this month.
Okay.
So I apologize for that.
No problem.
Computer program, you just think we can do them all, but
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and I'll move that we accept the February 2018 Colorado Department of Military and Veteran Affairs local report to the state and federal government as necessary.
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to accept and sign the monthly VSO report. Further discussion? Again, I would ask, just as a housekeeping thing, if on these we could get a signature line so we're not just throwing.
it's a state form. I
So
emailed the
this
state.
doesn't come from you, this
No,
last
this
page.
is a state form that they sent me. I have no way to
Okay.
edit.
That's fine, no problem.
I did send an email requesting to see if there's something new, and I haven't heard a response
All
back
right,
yet.
good.
So,
Any further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed nay, motion carries. Your report is, I'll just sign it above it. It's a little weird, but
Tim, as far as tracking the out-of-county ones, You might talk to Chuck, because he's come up with some really good,
Okay.
reports for other offices, and maybe he could come up with something that would be simple.
You might be able to hack in and break your system.
Well, the system I'm using is a state database that's servers up in Denver. That's where all my, that goes to, so that's where I have to pull out of. So I don't know if there's other than that or something. Yeah. I'll talk to him now. Let's see. Okay, real quick. John Brents came down March 16th. He is a counselor up at the vet center, and so he contacted me. He is now Fred Strickland used to be the counselor who was the outreach guy, community outreach guy. John took over. So John came down to visit. We had a good conversation. Since I've been here, one of the questions, especially my first year, came up a lot was, what about whatever happened to that van? The VA's got a traveling van for counseling and so forth. And I was told that they stopped coming up here because it was too far off the main highway and so on and so forth. Well, John is one of the guys that drives the van. So we're in discussion about possibly reinstating and having that come back up, okay? He will be also at the health fair coming up. So we will be there. John, myself, and then Rosemary Jones, who's the home-based primary care nurse for the VA program. She will also be at the health fair, okay?
Could you please tell him that being out of the way does not make our veterans any less important than any other veteran in this state or country? And I really want him to come up.
Yeah, he really, he said, look, it means bring a van, or he would like to come at least once a month.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
So the key is going to be then is to get vets to show up, because like when Fred came my first year, I had him come every month for a while. We get one or two that would show up, and then after a while, then the supervisor told, hey, the numbers don't justify the time. So
one justifies it.
VA world.
That
VA world that
just as important as
And here's the
anybody
other
else.
thing, here's the other thing, if we need to send a letter stating that, we'd be glad to do that as commissioners.
Please let us know, and I'll bet you Senator Gardner's office wouldn't hesitate to jump in and agree with us.
That's
I'm
right.
just guessing.
You gotta go both ways too, Tim. You need to get that
So,
letter
yeah.
out to the vets so they understand there is that service.
We did.
Otherwise,
we had stuff going out.
But the thing, and you've said it several times, is, well, you know, the VA doesn't want it. Well, you know what, we can have a say in that. We can say, you know what, maybe you don't, but understand this commission.
It's in every fight. I'm fighting every day.
Well, I'm saying, you don't have to fight it alone,
We
but
will
we can
join
jump
the
in the
fight.
fray.
And that's why October I had the regional director here. We had the VA town hall meeting. So we just keep communicating and we just keep going. So,
Get us there and we'll fight with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
Sean?
But John's definitely, we had a good conversation about it, so I think some good things are going to happen there.
Good.
So, like I said, the health fair, I will be at the health fair with John and Rosemary Jones. Rosemary, I know real well because my dad's in the home-based primary care program for the last year and a half, and he's now in hospice down in Hildebrand. And one thing with my dad's situation is a close learning situation about the home-based primary care program. And just let know is once my dad became hospice, he was in home hospice, now he's down in Hildebrand. Rosemary found out, and this was some for her, that the VA is paying for my dad to be down at Hildebrand. So he's a non-service connected rated veteran. They always pay 70% or higher to pay everything, but because he's hospice, the VA does pay for hospice care. So that's good information you have to the community, because I guarantee over the years, we've had other veterans who other places and nursing homes that are also hospice and probably had some private pay involved or something. So as long as you're in the VA system, they will pay for that. State training conference coming up on the 10th. Excuse me, sir.
What's up?
What's up?
I didn't know what was going on here. I was trying to show you guys where the gold was.
Okay, well, have a seat, please.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
How you doing, Sean?
Good.
Good, okay. State training conference, annual conference is always in April for training. That's required that I go to, so that's coming up. And then the other thing I thought I mentioned, April 14th, the day after I get back, Freedom Paws, Sandy Esposito down in Kansas City. She is about Freedom Paws. Freedom Paws is an organization that provides service dogs for veterans. And so I'm actually sponsoring the table down there. I just thought I mentioned I got 3 more tickets to sell. So I just thought I mentioned 2. It's a great cause of $30 each. It's a great function. It's a great event. And matter of fact, Sandy is blind. Her husband's a Marine vet. Matter of fact, she's getting a new service dog herself this year, so, I just thought I'd mention it.
Time and location for that?
It's at the Abbey, on the 14th of April, I wanna say 6 o'clock, top of my head, it starts, but, it's great.
Did we buy the tickets from you?
Yeah, yeah.
How'd you
Yeah.
get the word out? Did you send it out? I mean, is it other than just them?
Well,
Locally here, did you
well,
put signs in the stores?
no, okay. She's taking care of the PR, publicizing.
All right.
Okay.
So you're
She asked
happy
me
it's
if I-
getting around?
Yeah, and I thought I had all 10 tickets sold, and a couple people were gonna be out of town, so I just thought I'd mention it. It's a great cause. She comes up once a year normally, comes up here to West Cliff. So, and the only other thing left is my update.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
For confidentiality, I'm not gonna mention the name, but I got a call from a woman last week, and it's her father who lives here, he's a veteran. She's taking over as the court-appointed guardian and conservator. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this or not. She was trying to get a hold of you, but, you know, you had other things going on. But it's now talking, I wasn't sure if you were familiar. I told her that, you know, she's trying to get him evaluated for being admitted. You know, he's apparently got bipolar that's out of control.
I have to double check my notes. I had a lot of phone calls when I came back.
Because, yeah, that's why she called me, because she couldn't get a hold of you, and I knew what was going on with you. I'll talk to, give you the name outside.
Yeah. And my voicemail mentioned I'd be gone from such day to such a day, so I'll double check it. I had 120 some emails and quite a few phone calls. Last time I was here last month, the update I gave was I was pending surgery, but I had to get clearance for cardiology before I could have my surgery done. And when I had the stress test done, failed the stress test, the cardiologist was concerned about a blockage. So instead of having surgery done on the 21st, I had a heart cath done on the 21st, and they found nothing. There was no blockage, no nothing. But it still cut me out of commission for about the same amount of time to recover. They went through the artery in the arm, and no typing, no writing, no nothing for a week. And so, anyways, so I'm cleared for surgery. My surgery is now scheduled for the 26th of this month, which I have to have that surgery done before I can have the second surgery done later on in about 8-12 weeks for it to have the tumor. The other thing that happened while I was out, I did 2 other appointments. I put in my post-op follow-up for the heart cath. Then I went and saw an ENT. As you may recall, I've been struggling with a cough for years, but it's really gotten bad the last year and a half. So that's what triggered a lot of this. Was I went for the scope. So I was concerned I had the problem here. That's on the tumor, and that's triggered all the dominoes. Well, I went to an ENT on Thursday. Talked to him for 5 minutes. He diagnosed me with cough during asthma, and he said, CAT scan head, the whole thing. Anyway, short story is, put me on prednisone. Within 24 hours, my cough is gone. And I have not coughed in 6 days.
Can you blame the chest?
But anyways, so I do have asthma, so that is triggering us to evaluate some personal decisions and so forth, options due to health concerns and so forth. But we'll keep the county informed on what we decide to do. So.
Sounds like you're on the mend and
yes,
taking care of that stuff.
So now I'm down to just having these next 2 procedures done. That should be all right.
Keep it going.
All right. Thank you, sir. Yep. Appreciate it.
Go Army.
All right. Hey, 2 years in a row, beat Navy, you know. We're doing good. Okay. I'll go over all these. All right, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Talk to you outside.
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
It's at 5. It's at 5 on the 14th, Saturday, 14th, 5 p.m.
5 p.m.?
Yes.
Thank you. Put that at 6.
Okay.
At the Abbey still?
Yes, it is at.
Okay, next up,
Thank you very much.
Office of Emergency Management.
Good morning.
How are you? Did you notice I did not say OEM?
That's good. Now you can correct me as soon as
Well.
I spit out an acronym and forget to.
Watch it.
Yeah, I'm bad. Acronyms. And while I'm sitting in the audience, I found a couple spelling errors and a word missing.
Yeah, we're pretty picky.
I'm getting that
This isn't a
impression.
final exam, okay?
Well,
No, the test is coming. I'm pretty sure on that.
we've certainly let a few things slide, so we're just gonna hang you out to dry.
Much.
Do you have any questions? Do you want to give me a couple? Want me to give you a couple highlights?
Yes.
Okay. highlights, last Friday, I went to La Junta to the, DFPC, Division of Fire Prevention Control. Basically it was a strategic planning, 5-year plan. The bullets there are they're trying to build state capabilities via a budget funding request. Mike Morgan, the director, is saying, we have a fuels problem in Colorado. We're not, they're not going to predict fire, but we know south of Highway 50, we are in we got some real concerns, including drought and stream flows and lots of good stuff there. They're looking to expand the mutual aid period to a 24-hour period and maybe provide all hazard support because a lot of them are seasonal, and we no longer have a seasonal wildfire calendar. It's becoming year-round.
And changing that from 12 to 24 hours, was it 12 before?
It is 24. Yeah, they want to change it from. And on their mutual aid, I don't know, but they're actually even talking to Forest Service, and there's some discussion that Forest Service may be doing some mutual aid. That's a hard one to push across that federal jurisdictional boundary. They were actually specifically requesting our input on dispatch capabilities and resource mobilization gaps. Resource mobilization is going to definitely be a topic that we'll be talking about at the CES meeting, and so when you get in your silos, you've got emergency management and fire prevention control, and then CDOT and public health, and so we talked about trying to break out of those silos a little bit, and and then the federal side, the Forest Service. So that was an interesting conversation. I'm glad I went. They know that we have issues with Gallagher and residential assessment rates and other big things coming. The fires over the weekend, the big fire that was out by Kiowa, the Rabbit 22 fire, they did not qualify for emergency firefighting funds. And we had just talked about this on Friday. One of the fire personnel from Comanche Grasslands was there. And the rule is you've got to be within a mile to do that mutual aid. And we have 39% of our land is federal, so we're usually going to be within that mile closer. But so local leadership was hesitant to call in resources, and that was a resource that was available. Fort Carson wasn't because of their fire. So they were able to pull some disaster emergency funding Sunday night to get the go-ahead for Comanche to come in, and that was through the emergency management side in the governor's office. So I didn't know that funding avenue was an option, but I talked to Christy at length about it, and I think we need to be ready to bang on every door we can as fast as we can. Ed Surjanic from BLM sent me a small grant opportunity that might be able to help us mitigate towers. He wants to go visit tower sites. And then coming up, we've got the CES meeting on the 20th. I got a lot of things there to try and talk to people about. But before the fire workshop, I was just telling Kathy about that. That's March 22nd at the Pueblo Emergency Services Bureau office. So far, I know they've invited some folks on the state elected official side, and they don't have any commitments, and they're trying to get some state, and I'll invite Kathy and see if we can get some federal representation too. And then the Ross Resource Mobilization, that is Pueblo Interagency Dispatch. Those are 2 separate days. I'm going to attend April 3rd. And those are the biggies upcoming. And we just keep working towards preparedness. On the mitigation side, I know of only one grant that's out there that one of the communities is trying to get a mitigation grant. There really isn't funding, and everything's so far out. The folks that are going after it, I will support them. But at this point, it's homeowners need to get involved. Don't mow the lawn when the wind is blowing. People need to be, so I brought some of the Ready, Set, Go brochures, but, mitigate, get prepared, and be ready to evacuate. Know all your ways out, and don't rely on communications and technology. And not to say that I can predict fire either, but I think we all need to, be good Boy Scouts and be prepared for the worst and hope for the best.
Amen. Can I ask a question, if I may, please?
Sure.
On the Junkins fire, have we received all of the matching funds that we've been expecting to get, or are there still any funds outstanding?
We don't have a reimbursement request in. Fire got some money on Jenkins Fire, I'm sure. That's what Christy calls the green machine. I'm not sure we can count on that in the future. We have not gotten a bill for the Jenkins Fire. And I found out on Friday the price tag on the Jenkins Fire, it went from 11 million to 13.5 million. Yep. We don't have a final because it went FMAG and came back to that 6 a.m. start point. We got really, really lucky. There's going to be a finance piece to this before the fire workshop from Fire Prevention Control. And then Joe Loviando is willing to come back, and I'm thinking maybe the April CES, but he's willing to come back and sit down and do a more expanded finance piece. And finance is such a hard animal because it depends. There's so many different circumstances. So I was telling Commissioner Flower the other day, the Millsap fire in Fremont County last year, I think it was like 37 acres, $280,000, and Fremont County just did a cost share where they're putting up $100,000 of the bill. So, little bitty fire, big bill. I mean, Fremont County could probably do a little better than we can, but that is one of my concerns. One of the things for the CES meeting is the disaster decks. I think at times, Wet Mountain, if they need to look at filing a disaster deck just to have it done, and then they go into Fremont County, as you know, and then Rye Fire Protection comes into Custer County. So we're having some conversations about those capabilities and decision points, and you know, at what point can we order resources for Fremont County and Rye Fire order resources for Custer County, and how do we know up front? You know, we don't want to wait too long. That was the conversation Friday. If you need the resource, you need the resource, and then Sunday night they're like, oh my gosh, who's going to pay for this? We're waiting. So that's why you guys get paid the big bucks. Help with that stakeholders meeting. Donna just sent me this.
Good.
Yeah.
I'll take it
Back
back.
in
I didn't
back.
know if
Yeah.
you'd seen it.
I just saw it sitting in the audience.
Was it the electric bill for the
Yeah.
tower?
Second one. So,
That's going to be on the CES agenda.
So it wasn't a donation
Back from
before.
last year? Are they going to charge us for last year? What's the deal on that?
My understanding is that we were never billed for the tower, which went in, what, I think the intergovernmental agreement's 2009 or something. And now, Sandra Cristo, first of the year, started sending us power bills.
I wonder if.
How much is it, just out of curiosity?
180, but I wonder if I need to have a conversation with Paul Erickson to find out why this is happening. And I will certainly do that if the board feels that that's appropriate.
I looked for that original interagency agreement between the state and the county to send it to you as an email. I know there's a hard copy in my files, and I know at least in that original contract, it does.
Yeah, who agreed to maintain?
County.
Well, county did, but there's somebody maintaining included the power and the
Well,
agreement, really.
It addresses utilities.
I thought they were supposed to pay and we maintain it. Wasn't that the original agreement?
I'll scan that. I know I've got a hard copy. I'll scan it and forward to all of you so that you have a chance to read before you call them up. And then I think the mutual aid agreement, whatever it was called, in the MOU in 2000. Late 16, early 17 that didn't get signed by all the partners. I mean, I don't think there's anything to prevent us from having an agreement subsequent to the agreement with the state. But, I know the clinic's position seemed to be that, that's not their responsibility, and whether that goes back to 911 or you as a decision maker. But I can certainly bring that conversation up. Terry Munson asked for that to be on the agenda, and so I was gonna hope she leaves that, but if not, I'll step.
So who's gonna pay in the meantime? We got it.
Well, the county.
County's.
We paid it last month, and we'll pay it this month. But so yeah, I'd like to get all the pieces in place and then have a conversation with Senator.
And I asked Chief Shy we've got to sit down next Tuesday at 10 o'clock, and I've got a laundry list of things to touch base with him on, so I can add that to the list. And I want to talk to him before, I talk to the fire board.
And will you bring up the MOU?
I certainly
the lack
can.
of signature from the fire department?
It's the fire department and the clinic. So the sheriff's department, the county, and the school signed, but the other two players never signed. And And fire, my understanding is they've decided not to sign because it's utilities, and the MOU says maintenance, cost sharing on the maintenance. And that MOU also says that, fire's responsible, we've got to take care of it, do everything, and so, depending on where this conversation goes, you may wanna rethink, start over and decide if you want more of a role in that, because it is your tower.
That MOU that I read, I don't think utilities was specifically addressed in there.
I didn't see it.
So,
But the original one with the state, I know it is.
so right now, we're getting hung out to dry, and
I'll scan the state one and send that to you, and then I'll attach the proposed county one from 16-17, just so you have them both in the same email and you can compare apples to apples.
you send that to
Copy
the
Clint?
counselor as well.
I can do that.
And if we need to rewrite that MOU, then, obviously, I don't, based from sitting in their board meeting, I don't see the clinic's position changing in this document the way it's worded, so.
Yeah, I don't either. And the next E911 is not until April. So, but I think CES is an appropriate place for all the agencies, at least discuss it.
Right.
But, we could maybe make a recommendation, but no.
And that's on
That's on the
20th, from 2 to 4, so I'm on
and
the calendar to be there.
Thank you very much. The only thing, other thing that I had was you probably all saw Shannon's email looking at fire restriction potential, and Joe Lobiondo said there's nothing else, no other restrictions he knows of. I don't think Los Alamos ever comes out of restrictions. And then Ty Webb sent me, they're meeting 2 of the 3 criteria that BLM is not foreseeing going into force in fire restrictions, so. But Friday's gonna be another red flag day.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. Anything else, gentlemen?
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Are you gonna leave a couple of
I'm
those?
gonna leave them,
Thank you.
yeah, so I'll
Okay.
leave some for you
Thank
and some for everyone else who wants one.
Gentlemen, if there's no objection, I'd like to call for about a 5-minute recess.
Why not?
We're in recess. Let the record show 10:27. Yeah. Did you see what he did?
Interesting young man. I give him
Yes, now, then back there.
mentally ill. He just kind of showed. He just he doesn't have a family. There's just issues from time to time up in Alpine Lodge. He's a really nice guy, but lots of issues. The reason he's holding $100 bill is because I loaned him $100 bill and 2 months ago, and I think he came to pay me back. I don't know. I tell him all the time,
security person.
Yes, all secure.
Call the meeting back to order. Got to thank Kathy for the business card, but she's gone. So, all right, let's skip back on track. You okay, Miss Kelly? We good?
Yep.
All right. Next item of business is old business. Gentlemen, anything to come before the group?
I do not have anything.
No.
Nor do I. We'll move on to new business. Our first item under new business is a conversation with Miss Beth Lenz with the Upper Arkansas Area Council of Governments.
And I'm bringing Rusty in.
Okay.
You got backup?
Yeah, well, no, he knows so much more than I do.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Way to go. You got her fooled.
Keep them guessing.
Hey, Rusty.
And Kelly Camper, our clerk and recorder, and secretary to the board. Okay, good. Good, good.
So, Jay asked me to come today.
I did.
We completed a solid waste optimization study last year, which is why Rusty was laughing. He laughs at me when I go in and go through trash. So I wanted to bring a copy. You get the original?
I guess so, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And there's a lot of supporting documentation that goes with this.
Thank you.
Thank you. But upon completion of this, there are some things about each county that we've tried to go back to the counties and say, okay, we've got some concerns.
Could you explain to my fellow commissioners who you are, what you do,
Sure.
how you fit into this scheme? Give us a little background before you
Okay.
get into the
I
nuts and
work
bolts.
for the Upper Arkansas Area Council of Governments, which is a government that, or an organization that houses area agency on aging, housing programs, a lot of different programs that are more economical to operate on a regional basis rather than on a county by county basis. We started a regional recycling program in 1998. The state approached us, saw that there was no recycling services going on in this area, and they said, would you be interested in taking this on? We are a member-driven organization. All of the counties are members. So we went to the members and said, all right, are we interested in taking this on? And how we went from that point is we did community meetings. That's how the board decided to move forward, and we actually placed bins on site in 1998. In Custer County, we've got 3 sites. There is a site across the street from the fire department. There's a site at the Dome in Silver Cliff, and there's a site at the landfill. We work really closely with Christy, with Oak, and this guy.
Rusty,
yeah. So we saw some disturbing things occurring last year with CDPHE. They had hired a couple of consultants to do an integrated solid waste and material management plan. And when the document came out, it was 320 pages of, yeah, it was pretty intense because the consultants didn't consider rural areas. They wanted to regionalize landfills. Our region would have been the mountain region, and it would go from Wyoming to New Mexico, just a nice section, straight down. And then it really made, it had the intent of making recycling a mandatory thing in all areas, funded only by licensing fees on your haulers. Now, if you're in a community like Pueblo County, and I'm using that as an example, not that I think that it should happen, they have 16 haulers, lots of trucks. And the cost of implementing this ban would be laid at the feet of those haulers. When you look at more rural communities where you've got 1 or 2 haulers, there's no way that they can cover that cost. So then the counties actually have to be the ones who are responsible for this. I had attended a meeting, a CCI meeting, a regional CCI meeting at the invitation of my commissioners, and, because I was very concerned about the document. And CDPHE had talked to CCI and said, Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. Yeah. CCI, Colorado Counties.
Got them.
Okay. CDPHE, Joe Shiplin, who heads up the division, had said, we have no intention of implementing. This is just a study. We just paid consultants to perform this. We're not interested in implementing. Absolutely. And then
just like wasted
2 months later, I went to a SWANA event where Joe was speaking, and I heard the words, "We're looking forward to implementing," come out of his mouth. And so at that point, I started paying more attention, because the cost burden, really falls on the counties. Recycling, especially in rural areas, because we don't have the economy of scale. I mean, we don't have a population that's going to make it profitable. It's going to cost us. It's going to cost us. And if we ban everything, it's going to cost us a lot. So,
that's all over.
Well, so in the meantime, we've worked with, and I have to give Christy a lot of credit. She stepped up, and I ran for the board for the Colorado Association for Recycling. Christy serves on their policy committee now, and we've kind of, both her and I are very stubborn, so we're trying to get them, just a little. We are trying to shift the focus away from this huge burden, and I think we've been pretty successful. One of the things CDPHE has done is they opened up a grant to do regional studies, to really find out what's going on in an area, because they realized they didn't know. So,
what's going on with Custer County?
Well, Custer County is a little concerning. So, Custer County has a landfill that is about 6.3 years from closure, with no reserves in place. On average, a community starts looking at funding for a landfill 15 years out. And you're 6 years and you don't have the funds to even do the engineering for an expansion. I know that, it's okay, we can do a transfer station, but the transfer station will probably quadruple your trash bills, because your tip fees are rather low. Then you have to look at the cost of hauling. Each transfer truck costs approximately $140,000. You're going to need multiple trucks in case of weather. It's, Howard Disposal runs a transfer station in Fremont County. They put over $1 million into their transfer station, and they didn't build it. That's just what they had to put in once they took over. Waste Connections is actually who built the transfer station. I know they had at least $1.5 million in it. So it's a very costly, Custer County is a county that we estimated, we met before the meeting this morning, we estimated about 33% of your population self-hauls. So they either take their trash directly to Oak, or they take it out to landfill. When you're talking about trash rates increasing, quadrupling, then you can really look at a correlation between illegal dumping and the trash rates. On a day-to-day basis, you've got that segment of the population that will illegally dump. You've got that segment that would never consider it. It's double your rates. Then you're looking at, okay, we're going to start seeing a huge increase in illegal dumping. So that was very concerning. In this study, what we did is we had stakeholders. We invited anybody who was interested in solid waste. given the controversy that was happening last year, we did have one commissioner who participated. We thought about bringing in all of the candidates, but that was a little bit difficult. So instead, we went to Rusty, we went to Christie, we brought in Joni Liebman. We wanted to get a real good basis. It was very interesting. Custer County generates less trash than any other county in the region, which is an amazing thing. It is. So the national average is 4.41 pounds a day. Custer County is at 4.69. This is on the first marked page. Custer County is at 4.69 pounds, so yay. And then we did a solid waste plan in 2005 where we had a minimum diversion rate. So because we do waste audits, it's like a snapshot in time. We've got to dig through everybody's trash, divided into all these categories. In 2005, he laughs every in 2005, we estimated that 6.2% of your trash is getting diverted.
Diverted from the hole
Diverted from the hole in the ground, yes.
Got it.
In 2016 or 2017, we estimated that at 16%. So, yay, amazing increase. The state average is 19%. Nationwide average is almost 39%.
So how did you determine that? Just out of curiosity.
There are audit standards, and I can show you what.
We didn't know. Just.
You go through the trash. Well, number one, you need to find out what volumes are being recycled in your community. So you get the volumes. And a diversion rate is actually quite simple. Take the amount that's going in the landfill, take the amount that's being recycled.
All right.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah. It's a simple
math.
Very simple, yeah. But then we also look at the waste characterization study. Really looks at what's in your waste stream, what can be recycled.
So we've been getting better.
Absolutely. Phenomenally better. Custer County was the only county that we didn't find not a speck of glass, which was shocking.
No way.
Yeah.
They're now recycling it?
No, not in the samples. In the samples, there was no glass. Yeah. As far as, so on the very first page that's marked, you'll also see a breakdown of what was in your trash. Hazardous and special waste, 7.1%. You didn't have any hazardous waste, just so you understand. So on the second page that is marked, we actually go through some of the recommendations and some of the feedback that we received from the stakeholders. One thing that 100% of the stakeholders agreed that funding for landfill expansion needs to be a priority. 100% also agreed that they would support a tip fee increase if it were solely set aside for landfill expansion.
Are you talking about county or region?
County. These are county specific. Rusty does a phenomenal job. I have to give him, even though he laughs at me. I'm a landfill geek. I go and visit landfills on vacation.
I was gonna mention that. That was the comment. That was the comment that you said at our meeting a couple of weeks ago that I said, this lady's got to come down here.
My husband hates it when I say, oh, let's drive.
Let's go visit.
So I have to give a huge amount of props to Rusty, but he's been operating in less than enviable conditions. The fact that we are 6.2 years from the end, and
be careful if you're asking for another pay raise.
Really?
Keep going, man.
Can we break for a minute?
Uh-oh, kick back, I hear. What are we gonna do? I mean, if it takes 15 years from the time you start thinking about it, I mean, Rusty, we all met, including our counselor, met just a couple of days ago. We had a tour of the landfill. Rusty showed us multiple areas where we can expand to. Mr. Chairman said, and rightfully so, it was so clean where we walked.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was fabulous.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was fabulous. But what really gnaws at me, because we went through this last year with prior commissioners, that we're running out of space. We have to do something.
Yeah.
And I really think this is an urgency
You
that
know,
we need to get moving.
Nobody wants to pay more for their trash service, and I get that. I totally understand that. But you're getting down to that point where you're either going to pay a little bit more now to fund a landfill expansion, or in 6.2 years, your landfill is going to go away, and you're probably never going to get that permit again.
Right.
CDPHE is not, they're not handing out landfill permits.
We're not gonna let that happen,
Yeah.
just to let you know.
And we have a problem barging it out.
So we wanna
of
make
Custer
sure we
County.
can tap all the sources we can.
Yeah.
So that's where we need help.
I think that the fact that 100% of the stakeholders, 100%, were supportive of a tip fee increase, and we're not talking about this massive tip fee increase. We sat down and we came up with a scribbled out plan that really was not as impacting on the residents.
Who's the we?
The stakeholders.
So let me ask a couple of questions, okay?
Yes. The Custer County stakeholders.
About a year ago, Rusty did a study, and I really appreciate it, on our landfill fees versus surrounding areas. And we were comparable, maybe a little bit low. The commission at times have decided, let's not touch it, we're okay. If we had an increase and we had more money, how is that gonna help us with our landfill issue?
So if you've got more money, that money needs to be spent, it needs to be earmarked. It needs to go to expansion costs. Because Rusty's at the point now where he needs to start doing the engineering for the expansion. It takes a lot of time.
Okay, let me just make a comment. If you take the population and you multiply it by whatever, that's not gonna be enough to do what we need to do to expand. So that's a nice idea, but given that, and we run the risk of driving it into the bar pits, and we run the risk of people leaving. So we have to balance that. And so what we really want to look at are all options, you know, that are available. We got time to do that, but not a lot.
No, definitely not a lot.
But we need to understand.
You look at your tip fees right now, $10 a cubic yard. Okay, a resident can choose to take it to Fremont County for $20 a cubic yard.
No, I understand.
Or they could take it to Chaffee County for $80.
They could dump in the bar pit for nothing.
Exactly.
So,
however, when you don't do a massive increase, and we're not talking about massive increases, and I'll get the notes from the stakeholder meeting, I can forward those to you, that lays out really a plan for funding. I think that we're trying to approach this from multiple fronts. So Christy and I have been working with CAFR, in turn working with CDPHE, trying to get more funding directed. The policy committee had voted last year at their retreat that their priority now is having CDPHE start sending funding to the smaller landfills.
Are you aware of any grants that could help us raise money to do the engineering and get the approval process
There
going?
is the USDA Solid Waste Management Grant. It is open in December. That would be about the only one.
That you're aware of?
That would be the only one that we could really make a strong case for. I think there are other grants that are available that we could, with some wordsmithing.
well, we need to understand each of those kinds of choices so we
Absolutely.
can help make, help with this.
However, there's not going to be a grant out there that's going to cover 100% of the
Well,
cost of
sure.
the expansion.
So how do we even know how much we need?
Because
what's it gonna cost to do the engineering, and what's gonna cost permitting? I mean, I don't know the process that needs to go into it, but I'd like to know, we're gonna need an additional, I'm making a number, $700,000 to expand it for the next 20 years. I'm making a number. And then we can figure out how we're gonna get that money. But I'd like to have a feel for what we're talking about.
Yeah, see, in 2010, just for the engineering alone was gonna be approximately $150,000. And that's before you do anything else.
That's just the study.
That's
basically.
for the
The
engineering to
engineering,
get
which is
the
required.
permitting from the.
On whatever piece of ground we want to point
Right.
to. And
So
we've
if
got
we wanna do
some
that
that we
area
own right
fill
now, and
over
some
there,
we
we
don't.
can get started over there, but that's the cost of the engineering to get it all figured out for the Colorado Department of Health.
So just to open the door to this discussion, so that in 6.5 years, we don't put a sign up closed, we need to come up with 150 grand somehow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you know, and I'm sure the prices have changed since 2010, and rules and regulations have changed too.
It could be higher, most likely.
But,
Yeah.
when I talked to CDPHE when they were out there a few months back about that area fill, they're all for it. They think it's a great idea. And I was thinking we'd probably have to have a leachate pond down below. And they said, no, we wouldn't have to do that.
Leachate
So
is
there's,
trash
Yeah, we
juice?
saw.
so there's something that we're gonna save money on right there. And whether or not we have to line it will be up to the engineers to prove to CDPHE that we won't need a liner.
So how critical do you feel it is that we get this engineering study underway?
I would say by the first of next year, we better get after it, because we'll have, you know, budgets in October, and then this grant people are what,
The
December?
USDA grant, yeah, it's opening in December.
How long does it take to go through that process?
If approved, we could probably expect to hear by February.
Okay.
So it's not a
Not too bad.
it's not, and then,
What kind of money
in
are they
February.
willing to shell out?
The last one that we had, which was in 2005, was I think 110,000.
That they gave to some landfill?
Yeah, well, actually, I think we could make a stronger argument for a little bit more because of the geographic isolation. of
That they
Custer
gave
County.
that much money to one
Yes.
landfill?
And would that money be able to be spent on the engineering?
I'm not sure, and I'm not sure, I do know that the match requirements, previously they didn't have a match requirement, they will have a match requirement, and I'm not sure what that will be. Yeah.
See, you have the engineering, then you still have to go in there and you have to strip the topsoil, you have to have all your machinery, you have to do all that work. You have to put in groundwater monitoring wells over there. We'll have the 3 that they're gonna drill, but we'll still have to have some closer up there, which would be up gradient. And then you have to have gas probes.
Right.
So there's a lot that has to be done before you can start placing trash in that area fill.
Sure. We've got time, it's just gotta make a plan.
Absolutely.
And also when you say raising fees,
Mhm.
it matters on what you're, just to raise them and then not really have an idea of the actual
Absolutely.
cost and figure out how we're gonna apply things and sell me on dumping it out there and
Absolutely.
paying a little more or not. And so.
And
you
that's
gotta
where I
get
wish
the
I would
numbers.
have brought the notes from the stakeholders meeting, because we actually sat down and came up with a fee structure that,
Well, what
I think it looked at $8 a yard initially.
Sure. But what I mean by that is if we get our actual, where we think we're gonna put it, we can get a guy to give us an estimate of what the engineering might cost, given the topography and what we need to do. And then we can come up with a plan on how we're gonna try to approach it, especially if we get a grant and we not know what the differences might be, and all that has to happen, you know. So we need to come up with a process.
Absolutely correct, but we need, my feeling is, we're close to behinding the 8 ball, we need to start working on that process.
I'm with you there, 100%.
17 years ago, when I started with the COG, I came to, or 18 years ago, I started with COG, but 17 years ago, I came to my first Custer County Commissioners meeting and met Rusty for the first time and heard him approach the commissioners 18 years ago and say, we really need to look at setting aside some money in reserves for landfill expansion.
You know, there's something about that, you know, just in my mind, the county is a service provider. The landfill is not a business. I recognize some income comes in that helps offset the cost of running it, but it is not a business. It doesn't need to pay for itself. It's a service like when we plow the roads, fix the roads, you know, all the other things that a county does. So, and I thought, you know, last time we had this discussion, I was thinking, you know, we do get a significant amount of money that comes in on fee payments. Maybe we could put that into a separate account and hold that for the engineering and the beginning study, and then the county, through budgetary process starting next year, of course, maybe change the budget to allow us to pay for the amount of landfill costs that are being offset by putting the fees into a separate account. And maybe that could be done without increasing fees. Certainly don't want to increase taxes. I do think we need to be competitive, and we looked at that, and I feel we are. But I'm just really concerned we're going to be in a position in the not too distant future where we're going to be stuck with a huge expense having to truck our trash out of here, which is 2, 3, 4 times what we're paying now.
I absolutely agree with that, and I also would recommend, and it's one of the recommendations in here, you do separate accounting for your landfill, but at the end of the year, Rusty's had some really good years. That money has all been swept back into the general fund.
Correct.
And
that's what I'm talking about.
And with other counties, that's not
Sure.
the norm.
Understand,
The norm
and that's a process we need to get together and figure out, just like you're saying, Jay. We got a budget, we can operate within that budget, and then we gotta figure out when it falls outside that budget, how we're gonna handle it moving forward.
Yep.
But we can't solve it here, right now.
I agree.
What we can solve right now is figuring out how we wanna make steps deliberately toward,
What I would love to resolve today is that, it's an exigent circumstance, we need to move forward. We need to start working on it now, we need to either put in committee, however, we decide that we wanna move forward. Rusty, kingpin on this. Beth,
I'm here to help. That's really.
that'd be good.
But I just don't wanna sweep, I feel we need to move forward.
Yeah, we do.
Christie had something.
Oh, I just was gonna say, last year, I think it was, the landfill operated at a $20,000 loss. And to give you a comparison, Lake County, which is not a much larger community than ours, operated at a $180,000 loss.
$170,000.
So, I mean, Russ does an amazing job. He's an amazing resource. He, really keeps everything under control out there. And I agree that it's a county service, but I mean, you've got someone great running it, and you can run it for way less than $170,000 loss.
Well, and it takes more, it takes a team to do it, and Rusty's got a good team, and the county people themselves.
Yes.
So we have an opportunity to do this and move forward, we just need to make a plan to do that. And this is great to have the data to help with that.
Correct.
We don't have to come up with, $150,000, $200,000 right away. We can come up with $30,000 and get
started. Get started, figure out where we are, and get some estimates going on the process.
However much, 20,000, whatever, to get the ball rolling, just to get it going, because you figure you have 6.3 years left where we're at right now. Well, you're gonna want to have, you might as well say 5 years, because you're gonna wanna be over there digging and get that prepared and ready.
But CDPHE is great at
So when you finish these trenches and start closing where we're at right now, that you're gonna wanna be ready over there to go over there right away.
You said it exactly right, but we gotta get moving today to do that. I mean, in a reasonable period of time, we don't wanna just keep, I don't wanna sit here a year from now and have this discussion again.
We've also seen CDPHE being much easier to work with recently. And like the 3 wells that they're actually absorbing that cost.
For it.
So just so you know, we're working on this on multiple fronts.
Wonderful.
What I'd like to do, Jay,
Yes,
is I'd like to grab Rusty here after today, sometime soon. We'll sit down and look at the steps that are going to be necessary to get to that 5-year point, and figure out what we need to do to take, fund whatever piece of it first, or, build it in different stages. Sure. We got you come up when we went out there with Tom and I and Jay, and we got some pretty neat options from what I see.
Yeah, we do.
And we just need to come back, and then we can build a plan, get enough people on there, and then figure out what grants to go after, what internal money we can shift, etc. But we need to be deliberate about it.
engineering design and operation plan is good for the designated landfill area where we are right now. If we expand over the fence to the east, then we'll have to have another engineering design and operating plan built by the engineers.
Sure.
So step by step by step is what we will
It
do.
looked like you showed us an option to
All
stay
that.
within our own boundary right now to make the first step and then expand into that new area.
We had the land, looked like.
Yeah. So it's good.
There's a couple of things that gives me angst about all of this, obviously. The money's one of them. But number one, that it was discussed 15 to 17 years ago, and we're still discussing it today. So that was a very short-sighted period of time from the leadership in this county. Should have been addressed a long time ago. But given the fact that 17 years ago we still had 25 years of life left, so nobody gets in a panic about that.
Didn't like that, didn't you?
Secondly, I would love to be having an engineering firm, man. I could be raping people when it comes to this landfill thing. That is absolutely ridiculous. I'm hoping that we could go to CHPE and say, hey, we are sick and tired of being abused financially when it comes to doing something that you require, and when a third party is going to come in and do the work.
And CDBG, I have to give credit to CDBG, which I never thought would come out of my mouth. They've been really great.
Yeah.
But as far as
But just in the last
the engineering costs,
year.
that actually, that's actually something, maybe policy for CFR.
I mean, it's out of control. It's ridiculous.
It is, and I agree. I agree. And unfortunately, because the state had an audit, and so they're more amenable to funding contractors rather than staff.
You know, and my thing is we should be able to do all of it and ready to put trash in a trench for the kind of money we're talking about. Get the stinking engineering done. It's ridiculous. So that causes me some serious concern. The other thing is that. And I think we're probably all on the same page. If we're going to do any of this, let's do every acre of land that is out there and is available and under the ownership of the county. Obviously, we need to look down the road at acquiring more land if that's necessary, but, you know.
Yeah, and I went and visited in Rio Grande County, the San Luis Valley Regional Landfill, and they've done exactly that. When they did their plan, they had every plot of land, every cell.
Well, it's certainly short-sighted not to do that. I mean, in 30 years, when we're long gone and the commissioner's sitting here, you're going to go, someone thought that ahead, and
You don't want to think
that's
that
the
we
way
missed
we
it.
have to think. We have to think long-term. We have to.
And the other thing that causes a little angst with me is being a Board of County Commissioner. Obviously, nobody wants to address a tax increase. Everybody's afraid of their political career for that. They're probably a little bit more at ease with talking about increasing the tip fee for the landfill. But I maintained from the very beginning of my involvement in this whole process, if this county wants or needs to do anything different than we're doing right now, somebody's going to have to pay that bill. That's the hard, cold facts of it. If the taxpayers want to start transferring their refuse to, I'm assuming Pueblo is where it would go.
If CDPHE had their way, it would be Salida.
Okay. Then we need to have that conversation with the community and say, these are our choices. Either we're going to raise your taxes, or we're going to raise your fees, or we're going to buy into the transfer thing. To me, if there's another option,
something else that we're doing.
If there's a fourth option to that, I don't know what it would be, other than illegal dumping, which would be on the verge of. So they're going to have to buy into it one way or the other.
Right. And illegal dumping is really a major concern. I mean, there was a study Rusty talked to us about a while back, for every $1 increase, how much more illegal dumping, and then what's the cost of cleaning that up? I mean, this has to be a community buy-in, so that we hope eliminate as much of that as we can.
The thing that I was heartened by was during the stakeholder process, we did a survey, and 100% of the respondents, 100%, would support a tip fee increase, but only if it were
That money was
earmarked
earmarked.
for landfill
Only
expansion.
landfill.
Only
That's
for the landfill
important.
expansion.
That's important.
Yes.
And that's what Beth just said is kind of what I was going to say too. You know, you can't look at it as a per person rate, but it's a per bag rate. So if 17 years ago when Rusty was coming in here, if it had been agreed to put, say, 25 cents a bag that's dedicated to landfill increase, you're more than having taken care of it. If it's 25 cents, or maybe it's 10 cents, or I mean, there are ways to do it that's not like $10 more a yard or whatever.
No, we understand that. Don't misunderstand the questions or the points here. We need to know what it would be, because to throw it out now and have people wringing their hands without the data behind it to come up with, like Tom was saying, we got to make a choice here. We got to show them what the choices are and what the actual numbers will be if we do that. So,
Well, I'm not sure I do understand all of it. So
No, we
a
don't.
bag fee would be charged, an increase in a bag fee. You're talking about individuals taking their bags of trash to the landfill.
yeah, it's
not-
use of the land.
Not
so
Oak Disposal
well,
making their landfill.
So that would get an increase as well,
Right.
but like for the individual that's going out with
Everybody.
2 bags to the landfill and that costs $2 a bag, maybe it'd be $2.25 a bag,
Right.
and that 25 cents is dedicated
Right.
to your expansion, and then maybe my cubic yard rate goes up X amount or X
And that was
percentage,
what
and
I was getting to.
that
The bag fee
offsets.
is them going out
To
there.
have your haulers
Sort of
sit
a
here and
general
say,
statement.
and
I would buy into
fee
that
and
if-
my fee goes up.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are in an enviable position.
Right, not many haulers would say that. would they?
Well,
We're all
because
responsible.
the idea of anyone, whether it's as a hauler or individuals, having to drive basically 60 miles to get rid of their trash, that's devastating. I mean, as an individual that lives in this community, that's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely ludicrous, exactly. So the idea, I guess what I'm trying to get my mind wrapped around is, if that was the route we chose to go as a county, to say, okay, we're gonna increase bag fee, we're gonna increase fees, earmarking that money, then we could go to Oak Disposal and say, we also wanna increase, we want you to increase your fees and also earmark that money to go to landfill expansion. I mean, to me, that would
Well,
be
you
a
would charge them a little bit more on their tip fee,
That's right.
and she's supportive
And
of
we
that.
would
and I
raise
can do
$10 a square yard to maybe
There you go.
11 or 12 or something, and you would pass it on to your consumers.
A lot of other
Or
counties
whatever
have-
you chose, I mean,
Right.
you're your own
Right.
business, however you chose to handle it.
Oh, yeah.
But it has to be consistent with what the fair rate is, and my biggest concern is.
And I can give you updated numbers on
I know you can,
landfills.
but my biggest concern is, I don't wanna say it's an extra $1 a bag, $3 instead of 2, and I find that it's costing Rusty and our road and bridge people $4 a bag because they're leaving it on the side of the road and we gotta go out and get it. You know what I'm saying? We have to, I think it's so important to have the community buy into this so that they understand what's going on. I think Commissioner Kander said it exactly right. The community's gotta be involved in this. We can't just go, oh, by the way, the fees went up so we can expand our landfill. Yeah, right. You know, so.
So we do need the data to make that,
Right.
come up with what it's gonna be, including the trash haulers that come in, like Christie, that need it, or the contractors that are around bringing their big loads in to us, et cetera.
We get enough trash where we could raise $150,000-$200,000 in a relatively short period of time with a very moderate increase, or at least enough to get
See, we
the
even,
process moving.
that's another good point. The point is, the time frame is not 5 years. The time frame in order to get this $100,000 raised is a lot shorter, because you need the study to understand that. Or I don't know that it's 100,000 issue. Rusty had a good point. Could be $20,000 to get an initial study together to figure out what we want to charge.
And when we sat down to try to come up with a plan, we did, okay, so it's gonna cost $30,000 initially for the engineering, and we came up with a plan that would have fully funded it without being this huge sticker shock
Right.
of having to double your rates, or I think initially we started with a $1 a cubic yard increase. But it was a graduated increase that took you up to what the rest of the region is paying for landfill.
let's talk to that for a minute. Custer County currently, $10 cubic yard. Chafee's 15.
Now, Chafee, so it's a little bit difficult because they have scales, so they charge
By the
by
ton.
the ton. So you're approximately about $20 a ton. Chaffee County is $80 a ton. Lake County is just they're trying to increase them now because they're upset because
But
Chaffee
they're
County
way
is now,
over 80.
No, actually, they're still at. I think they're at 75.
Oh, okay.
And then Chaffee County surpassed them, so now they're going to go back and increase their rates again.
And here we said at comparably, that's back to your point where you said we need to see where we're at comparable. We're nowhere near comparable to our surrounding counties. I don't know about going south. What about Werfenau?
They don't have a landfill.
They don't. Yeah. So the San Luis Valley is got a regional landfill.
Right. And that's where Werfenau
And-
County goes that way or to Pueblo?
Oh, do they go Pueblo?
How did you get the ton conversion? Just, I know it's
That's
volume
rough.
and other
It's a
things, it's
rough
very rough,
estimate.
so you need to be careful throwing those
Yes.
numbers around, because it's a shock thing, so.
Yes, I agree.
I think
Well,
the
it should be a
statistic
shock to
is
know that we're probably 4 times less than our neighboring county. Go ahead, Chris.
compacted trash, I believe, is weighed like cubic yard of tonnage is compacted. Household trash is 3.5 times. So whatever
So-
you're.
Because you have a third that's going in that's uncompacted, that's
Right.
self-haul, a 2-to-1 conversion is what we use for Lake County and for Custer County. We don't do the 2-for-1 in Fremont County because they have probably a less than 5%
Yeah,
self-haul.
self-haul, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, we have to keep this discussion going so
Yeah.
it doesn't get swept under the proverbial carpet. I agree with Bill. I think if Bill wants to, as a point of contact, meet with Rusty, we can all meet with Rusty, doesn't matter.
Well, we'll bring it forward,
Lay
we all
out
gotta
a
get
plan,
involved.
and some kind of a rough timetable, and then try to attach whatever monies that we can estimate to each one of those phases.
And we're here to support and help and
That's good.
we'll
It's one of
find
those things that Custer County has a landfill, we just have the land, basically. Colorado Department of Health and Environment are the ones that regulate it and set everything for us to follow. So,
Yeah. Well, and to put things in perspective to some degree, we just talked about, we were approached and asked about buying some additional land for our landfill. I personally don't believe that's the greatest need. We would have spent about that much money on land that we'll end up expending to get the engineering study done.
Yeah, we have
So,
good other options, but including an annexation of some
it's
smaller
just-
pieces.
Reinforces the idea that we really don't have any business buying extra land when we've got land that will suffice us for another 20 to 35 years if we can get it permitted.
CDPHE is, they seem to be really liking 100-year expansion plans right now. And you get the biggest bang for your buck. Lake County is in year 2 of an extension on their landfill before they implement their 100-year plan.
I do know that the way we're growing, and we're not booming, but it's growing. And look what happened from 25 years ago to now. We're not even 25, it's been less. So we gotta be careful. A 100-year expansion is
Yeah.
probably a good thing.
Another, just a word of warning is, as your per capita income or your median income goes up, your trash production goes up.
Sure.
Right now, you guys are doing great, 4.69.
Population's moving up too.
Yeah. So all of the diversion activities that are being undertaken, I don't know if HCR is as active as they used to be, but because the more we can divert, the better, especially as.
So can I suggest that maybe we establish a workshop in the next reasonable period of time?
Let us give us a chance, Jay, I agree.
And
It's a good thing.
we can start talking about, however, whether you want to do it in a workshop one-on-one, I don't care.
I don't mean one-on-one, but I mean, we
However
come
you
back
want to do
to the table.
to start talking about what do we need in the plan, how are we gonna devise the plan, and then maybe eventually come up with the plan. I would really like to have that study redone, because I remember it was probably a year, maybe a year and a half ago, that we did that survey of what other areas charged, and everybody was concerned about raising the fees. So, I mean, so we can have something to see, because I think Mr. Chairman is exactly right. I mean, why are we in dire straits if we're way under, if that's the case? I mean, we need to look at that and decide, you know, what's the right thing for us to be doing.
Yeah, we
at this
haven't done
point.
anything with the rates since 2014, so it's been the same.
And we got comparables last year, so I'll send that file.
And if we
And I
can,
can update it.
if we can get our hands wrapped around what the alternative cost would be, and that is transfer, that's information we can give to our citizens and say, you guys decide, Mr. Vogel.
An observation, when we talk about educating the community, I'm on the Round Mountain Board, and we've had at least 3 well-advertised, well-covered, open meetings offered to the community to talk, because we're with Round Mountain is looking at a structure that's antiquated and not reflecting current need.
Right.
In 3 meetings, well, the last 2, we've had 1 citizen attend.
I understand that, but I'll tell you where I think the community will learn it, from our 2 newspapers. If they report it.
They've tried,
No,
and,
not-
I mean,
Just to the newspaper.
give yourself time to sell the community.
I'll never tell them what to write.
Yeah.
But they could write, here's the problem, here's the potential solutions. You know, here's why the commissioners may come to you and ask for an additional, I don't know, landfill tax, whatever you wanna call it, okay, additional fees. That's the only way I know to get the word out. Because you're right, they won't come to a meeting if we hold it.
I actually was very heartened in Custer County, 100% of the invited stakeholders attended the meetings.
Good. Yeah, I've got some words that are haunting me too, because I had a discussion with some individuals, and a 19-year-old female said to me, we were talking about how do we get a grasp on what the citizenry of our county feels about any given subject. And she said, I just can't believe that in a county this size with the citizens that care as much as they seem to in this county, that you cannot send out a survey and get 70 to 80% response. I said, I don't know that. I've never seen a survey sent to the whole county about a county issue. I agree. I don't think people are going to come sit in the meeting. They might once they realize it's going to hit them in the
Once the
pocketbook.
first bill hits them.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
our thought
But-
process.
And the complaints start.
We're not gonna send a bill out at first.
Exactly.
So,
What we've really been concerned is that we got a couple of real good articles. In fact, they even overstated what the rate increase was going to be, and we had nobody show up other than the newspaper.
Point well taken, sir. Yeah.
It is.
Okay.
Thank you.
In the interest of everyone's time, let's try to move forward. Do you have some cards? Or
I
did
do. I have
okay.
cards, and I've also got realized I didn't give you the source documentation, which is there.
Oh, okay.
It's not included in the other packets. Just
Thank
just
you
the
so much for coming out. I really appreciate it.
No, there is not a picture of me.
And who took
There's
this
a
picture?
I did.
Ah,
on my
very
cell
nice,
phone.
Very nice.
And
And
interestingly,
had you not mentioned the water,
phones are
I'd have
amazing.
never even thought about
really,
it.
oh, and I wish the picture of the water would have turned out better because it was a muddy day.
Well,
thanks for the help.
Yeah.
Anything that we can do to help, really.
And anytime you feel the urge to come look at our landfill, I'm sure Rusty will let you.
He loves laughing at me.
Where do you operate out of?
My office is in Canyon City.
Okay.
I live in Florence, and I love Custer County.
All right, so we'll leave it, and we'll be back to this forum again with some process.
Yeah, I think
You're
eventually we
going
do.
to
I'm going to send you the comparables that I've got.
other landfills.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then in the meantime, I'll also
Comparable
look for
size
grants. Yes.
Yeah, we need to get
Well, I'll do regional.
I was gonna say, if nothing else, regional, so we know.
I think, number one, we want to know what is in that 1 hour radius.
Right. Yeah. And then that transfer. Because that's the option. If we don't do something, we will
Even though
be
we know
transferred.
it's gonna be very expensive,
Yeah.
we like to put out there, if we do nothing, this is where it's gonna go, and then your fees will be this much, so let's get on the
So there's
stick
engineering
today.
that goes along with the transfer too, so.
And I was just gonna say too, in looking at these prices, I think another thing that should be looked at is the per capita income for the residents, because if somewhere has an $80 tip or $80 a ton tip fee, but their per capita income is $60,000 a year, you know, there needs to be a correlation there as well.
Excellent point.
And
Excellent
that's
point.
included in the report.
Good.
Yeah. I would also suggest, Mr. Kenda, that if and when you guys get together, you might extend a cordial invitation to Miss Christie. I think she'd be a valuable outlet.
We gotta figure out on that, so team.
Perfect. And then same with workshops. I think certainly we would invite you, and I think that would be the next step, is to sit down in a workshop where we're not compressed for time and other people are waiting to get on the agenda, and then to start knocking out a plan. Okay, thank you.
I've got one question for Beth. Looking at some of the ready out of NOLA,
Yes.
is that a candidate site? Of course, that's
Possibly.
once a year.
Possibly. They've been real hesitant to address municipal solid waste, but we've been able to get 2 very, very, very small grants to this.
Because if you read their 30,000 foot
They
justification.
helped us pay for this study. So.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
It's nice meeting you. Thanks,
Uh,
Jay. Clint, always.
Come up and vacation in the landfill anytime you want.
We'll set up a tent.
It is, seriously,
We'll have a
nobody believes the view from that landfill.
Yeah.
That's why I just
That's true.
It's gorgeous.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
It hasn't been put online yet. I'm waiting for CDPHE to approve it. But let me give you, I can give you the Custer County.
He would come up and we'd just go walk around the landfill and he'd look at the mountains and say, oh, this is the most beautiful.
Look down.
So slow.
Nothing else, and then he'd get in his car and go away.
Of course.
Well, appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Christie, thanks for your
This
time.
is just unfortunately the
All right, our next item of business, under new business, is the Economic Development Corporation presentation. Mr. Vogel, welcome. Thank you for your patience.
What, your name?
How are you, sir?
Get this, let's get this chair out of here and you can.
And as just a side note, while we're getting settled in, Bill said he was gonna travel to Golden on his own because he has other business. So we're down to the possibility of, you said 2 or 3 of you guys.
Three
Three.
right now.
So maybe Jay and I could commute together, and you guys could do your thing, and is that reasonable? That fit into what you were thinking? Okay, good.
This is information only. I'm not gonna ask for any decisions.
Way to go, Charles.
So I'm learning. I'm learning y'all's system.
All right.
And we had a communications, and if there should be 3 packages of information, and if you don't have them,
What are they? I don't
the
have.
one is just a letter.
Got that?
Another one has
Got this.
that one, and the last one, which Brenda made copies of, should be
Like a letter?
no, it's about 3 or 4 pages.
I don't have that.
Don't have that. Don't believe.
I don't think you gave me that one to make copies of.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
Give it to her now.
I can go make copies.
I don't believe I have it either.
We've got a 4-page document with that on the front.
Yeah. Well, that's a 1-pager plus.
Well, whatever's in there, that's what we've
Okay,
got
yeah.
that I'm aware of. I don't have
It's
anything
always-
else.
Well, and in all truthfulness, that was what was initially done, and then another thing came up.
Okay.
But, let's
So,
see.
let me get a grasp on things. You're gonna talk us today about 2 things, correct? The
Actually-
broadband thing and the,
No, I'm
No,
not
he's
even
just
talking
talking
about
about
the
that.
broadband.
okay. So, to conduct a community presentation relating to broadband efforts, that's
That
off
was-
the table
yeah.
today?
Well, excuse me, no. I'm suggesting that with the ongoing confusion that, and Custer County Economic Development is willing to certainly support it from, our presentation, that we ought to have a community meeting. The rumor mill's still going, and the interpretation of what we're doing is still out there, so the intent would be to, and we realize we need an ongoing education
Okay.
process, so
All right.
we would suggest that we coordinate, and it's probably after next week's decision, would be the.
So you do have 2 things you wanna talk about.
Yes.
That being one,
But
correct?
that's one.
Would
That's
that
the letter?
Can I make a comment on your comment? Just for my fellow commissioners, we have had in the past, multiple times, we had evening BOCC meetings so that we can invite the general public, and maybe now would be a good time to do something like that.
And if not a meeting, at least to call it a workshop.
Sure.
Yeah, and you
But
know,
an evening one would be
Right,
is
I'm not
much
opposed
better
to that,
attended.
yeah.
part to get items 3 and 4, if you allow, is one of the things that came out of our community assessment was that we need to communicate better with the general populace. And, you know, we used to have combined meetings between the county and the 2 towns. And I thought that was, personally, I thought that was a pretty effective way of communicating and also coordinating between the 3 governments. So that's a possibility. But with the significance of the finances and the complications with the whole broadband issue, that was something that we came out of the recent discussions with y'all that, you know, and what has subsequently hit Facebook and such like that. And with the idea of trying to squelch some of the adverse complications, we'd be glad to work with you on that. There's a, this part, we applied for the Certified Small Business Community program next year. It does not require governmental approval, but it does certainly encourage governmental support. And this is all the information we've got. But the thing about it is, we have been working with the Pueblo Small Business Development Center for about 2.5, almost 3 years, working with companies here in the county and in both towns. It offers, basically the bottom line is additional training and a budget that would be a maximum of $30,000 to basically establish an annex to the Small Business Development Center office in Pueblo. The submittal is, I forget what time, but we've got a little time on that. But the bottom line on that is that we would appreciate a letter of support and, towards that effort. 2 of us already, Wilson, Jarvis and I, are already certified business consultants from the Small Business Development Center. And we've had some successes and some failures as far as companies we work with, which have certainly, in our minds, reinforced the idea that this would strengthen our business community.
So Charles, since we haven't had a chance to really read this,
I'm not expecting.
I know you're not asking for anything. That's good. We want to make sure that what it means to sponsor it, and we want to make sure we'll read it. And then we want to make sure that the public has time to, because that's why we advertise it. You know,
I'll tell you what.
How to get this out.
I have a whole lot of respect for the public, but typically the public,
if they don't care, that's their problem.
or they don't know.
Well,
part of the issues with Small Business Development Center businesses, and the first thing is to know that there's some folks here that can help them.
That was my real question is, so you're certified, what does that mean?
That means we are an arm of Small Business Development Center officially. They recognize us as being that. Part of this element is visibility on the community, so that the businesses know that there's an agency and people, and especially local people.
And you have talked to the 2 towns already, or you're
No, I
planning
haven't
to?
yet.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, we've been working with.
That's really the center.
Yeah, but we've got, we've been working with some of the, what's her name, with her beef products and stuff like that.
Elin, and we have a meat factory out there.
Yeah,
not run by you.
We have offered help to those. Part of the problem is for the people to realize that they need help. And that's, just so far into the business cycle. We started working with some guys that had
a diesel plant facility out here, and somehow they had kept it alive for 3 years after we heard what they were, and we started the process with them, and they decided they were going to close the business.
Well,
but you know,
it was decided.
Yeah.
I don't know that they willingly decided.
Oh,
it was
I
a
don't
matter
know.
of economics.
Well,
and that's
and like some of us couldn't realize how they stayed open.
Who was
as long
that?
as they
it
did.
was a travesty that that business closed down.
But this one up here, you mean?
Yeah, north.
Sidewinder or
Whatever.
Sidewinder diesel.
Well, and we've been working with a Critical Path Metalworks since the onset, and that surprised all of us.
That was a shame.
But anyway, please read that. All we need from y'all is a letter of support on it. The previous board, when we submitted it last year, but obviously we need to update that, and we will be contacting the two towns. And
okay.
When do you need that by, or is there a time frame?
this is like a May-June time frame.
So you'll pound on us a little more.
The applications close the 1st of June, so we've got
Did
time.
you provide that letter for our signature, or would you like us to craft that document?
I can provide you something.
Rural response recovery
Can I ask
resilience.
one quick question, Tom?
Sure.
Because you brought it up. So, the letter of support we're gonna have to understand, are there other people, or is it just the CCED that's certified? What is it? Is it open to be participating, so there's a lot of people involved? How's it set up?
If you can find anybody else in this county that wants to get involved in economic development, we would be glad.
Well, that's what I'm
embrace
wondering
it.
is, well.
I mean, we've been through this 6 years, and there hasn't been anybody, in fact, I run people off because I tell them they come to one of our meetings, and I said, chances are this is the last time I'm gonna see you, because the ones of us that are doing this, it's a full-time job.
Well, it depends on how you sell it, though, and what.
I wanna be truthful.
My point is, no, that's a good point. You're missing what I'm saying. Our endorsement on this, we want to help. And how do you sell it to people that says, if you're on, this board's going to be good because we're going to have experts here, and we'll get businesses from closing, or we're going to get businesses to bloom, or what is it? What are we selling here?
Please read this and we'll discuss it further. We've got
That's
time
the
to
point.
do
That's
it.
why we need they have a good time.
And that's why you've got it.
Any chance that Custer can be included in the 4R counties? Has that been determined, this rural response recovery and resilience one? I wonder what they're
that's a
recovering
new,
from.
I don't know, and I don't know that we are, and there's a question, why aren't we? Because we're obviously
I don't know what page it is in our number. Yeah, I just wondered, if that's something we could look into and say, how did they qualify? Do we? And what does recovery mean? I get resilience.
This is one where we submitted last year, and the manager of it, they extended the submittal date, and they offered some help to work on some of the answers, and it came back through SBDC that, hey, Bogle wasn't responding to email inquiries. And, well, the first question, did you all really submit it? I said, yes. And there was criticism that we were not responding to emails. So this was past the due date. We lost out and everything for last year. I talked to the program manager, and she's, being a little confronting, and she said, well, you didn't answer my emails. And I said, what email did you use? And she left a letter out of the email. So hence, I never got any of her messages. I said, on any correspondence I put out, there's 2 phone numbers. Oh, well, I don't use that. I talked to her boss at the state level. She has been here. She's visited in preparation and support of this cycle. I think we've got a real good chance of getting it, but because the one thing that differentiates us is with the active coordination that we've been doing for almost 3 years with the Pueblo office. So, and we're willing to support it. So it's
well, everybody in small rural communities complains about that statement, right? Or sorry, yeah, ineligible counties. So we finally got a program that's saying, we don't care about the Front Range, we're talking about small rural counties. And that's heartening for me. So, good. Well, if you will craft up a document for us to consider, you know, I think we can have this conversation again.
And just to reiterate, the board did give a letter of support last year? I thought we did.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're going to update everything with turmoil and people and all that. I would like to bring another information item, and this is the one that Brenda just did. This is the one time a year opportunity for DOLA Ready grants, Rural Economic Development Initiative grants. You may remember we had a community assessment last year with pretty good attendance. On part of my problem was with all of everything that was happening last fall, and then we had a kickoff meeting, and then I let it die because I didn't see the vision of what it was taking to progress it. What we had originally asked for was an economic development master plan, which nobody in this county has done, to try to structure how we want it to be and give a certain element of control to it. One of the recommendations of the community assessment was that we should get a economic development master plan, which I said, oh, that's sharp. But anyway, which would be outside of the grant that we got from OEDIT for the community assessment. I've checked with OEDIT, I've checked with DOLA. OEDIT says we don't have the money, go to DOLA. So, and this is the one opportunity this year. It's effective at the end of this month.
Effective meaning submit a request?
Yes. And I've got a consultant that's given me an estimate right now. In part of the application on the last page or two, there is some data that's required from the county as it relates to tax base and such like that. There's an overview of the application, which, and we submitted this a year or two ago to your counterparts at that time and was unsuccessful in getting approval to go forward. Again, this is the information on it. The significance is with Ready, and I confirmed this talking to Christian the other day, this is the one time a year that this window opens up.
What is this money for?
And this is, you want to use this for your economic development master plan?
Yes.
Correct, whatever that, let's say it's $30,000-$40,000 or whatever.
It should be in that range or less, yeah.
Yeah.
Is
I
there
don't
any
see it
county
calling
match? Is there matching funds from the county?
Well, it's suggested your chances of getting it is better if you've got some. I would suggest, and would come to you, you know, of the budgeted items that are available now, I would suggest probably something on the order of $5,000 would be show good effort on our part, and without really hurting us.
If I'm not mistaken, wouldn't that pretty much deplete our economic development budget for this year?
No, you've got 23,500 less the one thing that we've done.
Okay.
At least that's what I've been told.
Yeah, I took a bunch out, did we not?
No.
Something?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so. I think it basically,
I
I mean, the understanding was that it wasn't, it was open for anybody that wanted to come in and
That's right.
do anything.
No, and I could see that being a reasonable request for that.
But I would like to be on the agenda for your end of the month meeting, and we'll work, like I say, the input from the county would be the last item that has to do local government financial
When we
information.
do this study, would you hire a professional consultant to come in?
I've got a dialogue going with a woman that we identified a couple of years ago, and yes, and she is well connected. She's been in economic development local and works with a lot of governments and such. The idea, and I'm going to go back to the state, to OEDA, and say, hey, I need help to progress the county situation.
She's local?
No, she's in Fort Collins.
If she could send some credentials, before I commit any county money, I sure would like to.
I'll show you her website. It's impressive.
That's what I want. I want something other than my neighbor's friend does this for a living or something. You know what I'm saying?
No.
And I don't mean that derogatory in any way. I just want to be good stewards of
Yeah, you bet.
county money.
I'll send you the website. Her name is Cheryl Trent, and in fact, it's the Trent. I'll send you her email.
That'd be great. Thank you. Send it to all of us, obviously.
Yeah, and I thought when I read this initially that the objective of this Ready grant was to, certainly won't be able to quote it verse by verse. Let me rephrase this whole statement. You feel like your objective of trying to get a grant funding a master plan falls within the realm of what they've set up for this.
Certainly. And I've had that encouragement from Christie and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
And I don't think it's they've indicated in this message they've got 700,000, which I think is a little less than what they've had. But then that's a DOLA issue with their overall funding.
And then our end of the month meeting is March 30th, and that is the deadline for this application. Do you want to come before us at our mid-month meeting on, is it the 21st in Wetmore?
Down in Wetmore,
yeah. Probably do that.
If it works out.
I understand, yeah.
Yeah, we'd be up against the deadline of this whole Ready grant.
Well, in all truthfulness, being very frank, pending the current and recent discussions, it was a serious decision on my part as whether I would even proceed this, but
why?
Because I wasn't sure of the support that we would get on the broadband program, and it's very where do we put our efforts?
You got 100% approved.
Well, and that's why I'm asking this week.
At the end of the process.
I understand.
At the end of the process, you got 100% approval, didn't you?
But Charles, I'm still a little bit confused if you want an answer by the 30th to get the application out. I understand that it involves three kinds of programs that, or the way it describes it, there are three types of projects are eligible. And right now we don't know what those projects are, right? And so what are you asking for? You're asking for a grant to go develop what's good for this county, or what?
And implement.
So we don't know what that is yet.
That's why we're doing it.
I know, that's why I want to make sure it's clear.
And part of the deal is we've got certain direction that we've been taking without a consensus of the community. And whether it's broadband or affordable housing or any of these other things. And it's just like we were talking earlier, it's a matter of getting the community involved and getting what tweaking and redirection, because people over the last 6 years have said, well, why do you do this? And I said, right now it's because we think as a group. Yeah.
What it is a strategic plan for development in logical steps for this community that fits the environment, fits the personnel, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Right? And so we're going to have enough information to pull together a pretty good application to go after this. Is that right? Have you gotten a start on it?
Well, yeah. I did it 2 years ago.
Yeah, and this really is a start.
The good news is we've got the findings of the community assessment that we did last year. And that's one big step.
Okay. Who did that?
That was done by a team from Office of Economic Development and International Trade. It also included, Christie was on the team, John Hall, who's the Economic Development Director for Westminster, was on the team, plus a fellow from the DOLA Data Group and a couple of the
Okay, so you're going to dust that off. and you're gonna update it? And
No,
you're
I'm gonna,
what are you
I'm
gonna
gonna implement it and follow up on its findings.
Been bringing us up to speed, forgive us for being new guys here and not having had the benefit of that. And last year it got turned down, or something you said, by the previous board. I don't know what happened.
Well,
so, let's get the history here and understand why,
If you want to know
and
the
be
workshop,
patient. No, I don't care about workshops. I care
Well,
about getting the information, and I care about what you're asking for. So be patient. And so you're asking us to do something here in less than 3 weeks to sign up to it, and we want to be professional about it and get the right stuff in front of people that want to grant things, and make sure we all understand what you had proposed or good steps, the things we wanted to develop for this county. And maybe Jay knows more than we do because we haven't been involved in it. But I don't know what your strategic plan was. And
we
so,
didn't have one. That's the whole
I know.
idea is to try to have
The way, that's right. The way forward. That's what I'm implying here. So you got it. It says it must relate to those kinds of things. So we're going to charter a group to go after and develop that strategic plan. Is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
If I may, we're looking at applying for a grant to fund a study to come up with a management plan for economic development in this county.
That's the ultimate.
That's what this READY grant is
Right.
all about, is trying to fund a study.
Well, we started a series of meetings, and the idea was to have a monthly meeting with citizenship of the CAP, the community assessment, because they left some holes in it. There were things that they suggested we did. There were some inaccuracies in it, but the idea was it was a building block to transition and ultimately be able to provide an economic development strategic plan. And so we've kind of taken that, and with the CAP study that was already done, grow on that, and probably over a period of 6 months or so, and then collect more data, generate more data, and poll and
Gotcha.
get the feeling of the community, and then
Okay.
turn it over to some economic development.
See, what's confusing, Charles, if you read through the application overview, it's saying project type, project name, project description, creation, for renovations involved. See, this is like a specific thing, and you're saying you want to get something that's a step back from that. You don't have a
Not
project.
really. It talks plans,
Yeah.
and especially the first item, projects include a plan to help diversify the local economy, strategic plans, etc. And that's where I'm saying that we would fall in. It's not an infrastructure, because we're addressing like broadband and
I
such
hear you. I was
separately.
just looking at what your application actually says that you got to address if you're going to address it, which is an attachment.
And one of the things we found out in past history, I could gain, it's an internet proposal input, and they've changed it where before I could get a login and such and do it, but now they're requiring it, and Brenda and I have talked that the county basically set up one entrance into this database, and so obviously that's something else that we need to accomplish.
And your cap, obviously, was this county or community, it was not a regional assessment.
Just a county.
Okay. Good. Okay.
A couple other information items. You've probably seen, and Bill, I'm sure you've seen, Action 22 is having a broadband conference on the 23rd, and I would encourage you. It's going to be more involved with the state funding and some issues there.
Can't talk to Sarah.
Yeah, I intend to be there.
March 23rd.
That's March 23rd.
You
And,
know,
I don't have the
do you know
email right
what's
now,
that
but
building
it's,
is, what the time is? I haven't heard
it's
anything about it.
from, what was it? Well, it's in my book. I think it's from 10 till 2 or something like that.
Okay. So it's Action 22?
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't got it. Let's see here.
I can send you, provide an email on that.
Do you know where it's at?
Yeah, send it out.
It's
Charles.
someplace in Pueblo, and
Probably in the Thatcher building.
I'm not sure.
Good.
Also, On the 15th of this month in Salida, we have a kickoff meeting with our tourism and outdoor recreation sector from 10 till 2 at the Annex in Salida. And
By the annex, you mean at the steam plant?
it's steam plant, yeah, the annex of the steam plant.
Okay.
Luis Benavides, the state's director of outdoor recreation, will do the kickoff speech.
Okay.
Where was that?
Steam plant in
You know what a
Salida.
steam plant, and you wouldn't, in most of the meetings are in the big room, but there's a deal to the west along the river there that we'll see about 100. So.
Okay, good. Is that a lunch thing or?
Yes, and we are, Custer County Economic Development is basically supporting that sector operation this year.
Okay, do we need to RSVP to that or?
There will be an announcement come out and it will help identify the numbers because we've got a contract from the lodge.
Date on that was what?
That's the 15th.
Yeah, I have that on my calendar, or
Okay.
had it prior to today, so.
And I will get back with Kathy and I'll let y'all know when she's volunteered to come up here and we'll give her a workshop on it and bring her up to speed on our total broadband initiatives because I've already talked to Representative our representative.
District.
It's the U.S.
Tipton?
Yeah, Tipton, yeah. I've already talked to his people. I know his Pueblo office manager, and they will give us a letter of support too for the Economic Development Administration grant. So,
Good. You think that tourism and outdoor rec meeting in Salida would be worth attending, obviously?
we're trying to, this is principally these sector meetings, economic development and other functions are supposed to be facilitators rather than decision makers. So the real trick is to try to get our businesses involved in this thing, and it's been a challenge. But this is a collaborative effort between the 4 counties within the COG, and the idea that basically from a tourism business standpoint, if we work together, we're stronger than if we work individually.
Right.
And the realization that, you know, Royal Gorge brings a lot of people here, but you can spend a day and a half at the Royal Gorge, and then what else do? You go back to Kansas or Oklahoma or Texas. And the idea is to cultivate the whole 4 county area on a, and I like one thing that one of the guys said earlier. If you come to Colorado on vacation, there's certain things in your mind that you've got that you'll do depending upon the season. It may be skiing, it may be rivering, it may whatever. That's one of the reasons that we've emphasized the trails situation here locally, because we don't have the river running through us and we don't have a ski area. So it was a matter of being a responsible member in that collaboration. Mm-hmm. And this is really an effort to try to explain to business owners what a sector is, because it's some of us have been exposed to it for 3 or 4 years, but the whole part is that the economic development and the tourism boards, the institutional organizations basically manage the support structure for the businesses, but it's supposed to be business driven, and that's where we've had a real challenge here locally. So I would say this, if any or all of y'all could attend that, at least it's something that our business people could see that you're supporting. And granted, most of them are in the 2 towns, but it affects all of us. So, and I'll bet you'd learn something too.
That's on the 25th. When you're
That's the 15th.
Or the 15th.
Yeah.
April, March, I'm sorry.
March. That's next week.
No. Sorry.
Yeah, I intend to attend that.
Well, and if you haven't listened to Luis, he's an interesting guy. I mean, he's climbed the Julian Mountains and but he's a real good proponent for tourism in the state. So I will provide you a copy of the email.
Tourism, Jay, shouldn't we have tourism guys going to?
Oh, well,
Sites.
our tourism board's an active participant
That's
with
what-
us. And that, we've got a group, that we call a roundtable, just a real informal group, and I've told you this before, but it involves tourism board, chamber, economic development, and CART. And we've done it for over the last year, of at least trying to collaborate and coordinate, and like we've got a branding issue, for the community coming up late this month, next month, and tourism board's taking leadership on that, and,
So in theory, they'll be there, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
They'll be heavily involved.
It's good.
Got any other questions?
I do not.
Charles, considering what you get paid for this county for doing all this, I thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yep.
So now I've gotta go home and work on some slides for Tuesday.
Yeah, good night. I'm worried about getting there. You got other things to worry about.
And I missed a haircut this morning, so.
Sit down, I'll give it to you. Half price.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, anything else under new business, gentlemen?
Say no.
Not for me,
Okay,
sir.
I have none. Public comment? Any?
Public's gone, they lost interest.
Well, not all the public's gone.
Except for the newspapers, but I see them folding their.
If there's no public comment,
Press it. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Get out of here.
I'll move that we
motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned. Let the record show 12:02 p.m.
Not bad, that's at noon, that's good.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you to Charles. I know